Cool.
And I have to consent. You have my consent, sir.
I didn't know that's a new addition. I'm glad that is or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah. So Cliff, it's good to see you. Enochian.Today. I'm really curious to talk about this completion of the Gebofal or ritual and the Libra Loga and Enochian initiation in general. I think is a fascinating idea that hasn't gotten a full shrift in the modern magical milieu.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think like it was interesting like when I was first reading about this in Megas books in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, I should say specifically, because I grew up in St. Paul, so we specifically say which city it is. But I was reading, just like this is like 20 years ago. I was reading this and that, and I did come across, you come across everything else, like, witch magic and stuff like that. And some stuff spoke to me, other stuff didn't. You read about Crowley and the Golden Dawn and all of that. But D came up, but it was like suddenly like there wasn't just that much more. And so you couldn't say any more about it because you didn't have any more materials to go off of, anything to read, even secondhand at that point. But
Yeah.
then all of a sudden in like 2014, for whatever reason, it kind of came up in my mind again. I'm like, what am I going to do? So wound up getting Duquette's, Lon Milo Duquette's Enochian Vision Magic, which, people, if people ask me about it, I say that's the place to start, because it makes it easy to understand what's going on with this system. How did it sort of come about? But even so, I still find a lot of value in all of the other books, because everybody's sort of bringing in their own perspective on it, and what
Yeah.
I don't expect everybody who's, yeah, exactly. You're holding up, Enochian Magic and Practice, or
Good
whoever has it.
stuff. Good
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, everybody, that's the thing that's interesting about it, is like you start getting into this and suddenly you realize it's almost as if like the angels as a collective set are bringing in through certain parts, through certain people. But if you take it all together, you get a much better, 360-degree view. And that 360 will probably come up later in the podcast, but of what it is. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's gotten a lot better from where we were, but it's still one of those things where you want to refer to a lot of different sources. I've only touched the primary sources a little bit. I mean, compared to other people who have been able to make out D's handwriting, I'm barely, past the first week of kindergarten with this stuff. But, when it comes to the actual Liber Loga and stuff like that, I was able to like make that out more or less. You kind of have to like go through the process more. I don't know how many old manuscripts you've looked at. This is like my first one where it's like an old manuscript, old timey lettering. But it was just like, it was tough like reading through it and just being like, okay, what is this letter, and did they mean this letter, and does this kind of look like something else? But so I don't know if you want me to just start at Loga, or just that's my general take on Enochian. Is I'm glad that we've gotten like a lot of stuff out there, but I've been trying like with the blog to just put up stuff. Hey, this is what I've seen. This is my experience with it. This is maybe a different way to approach certain things. Not everything, obviously. I mean, why would you change the call to the Aethers? It's perfect as is, it does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed
But
you're wearing your ring. Do you
yes,
wear
I'm
do you
wearing the
wear it
ring,
all
and
the
the Laman
time?
whenever I'm working on it, I am. And
Do
so
you wear it throughout the time that you're focused on the ritual? Right.
exactly. It's Aaron Leach in one of his books. You can tell I've read too many of his books to not be able to identify which one, but he said, without this, I shall do nothing, and clearly anything related to Enochian. And it's funny, despite the fact that it's been like the COVID time, the time of COVID, I have not, I haven't gotten sick, but that kind of can be explained by the mask and not just generally not being exposed to other people. But B, it's like the number of injuries I've had relative to my general clumsiness has gone way down as a result. So it's been interesting. But yeah, so you get a little protective field on top of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I wear it whenever I'm doing stuff. And just before we hit record on this, I was working on the an electronic version of the of Libre Logos, so that people who are interested in it, who may want to get started working with that, can just hit print on the
Yeah.
printer instead of having to do all that hand copying, which is what I did for 7.5 months. Although I do recommend the hand copying,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's like you get, it's your subtle body, it changes it. It's interesting. Like you don't know how else to describe it unless, okay, have you done like yoga or pranayama or something like that? Do you understand the basics of the subtle body? And if you get that, if you get like, you can actually feel the shifts in your body when you do that sort of thing, then I can tell you, okay, yes, this is what Enochian does, but it's like you have like a million of them, and you have to like go every time you do a letter, it's like a little something else is opened up. Some of them you're going to be more aware of than others, but as you go through the process, it's like, whew, you get that what I call an angel high off of that. It just changes you. It reconfigures your whole system. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Had you worked with many other magical systems before Enochian?
Yeah, so I've generally skewed angelic. So before this I did my way is like kind of crazy. So the one of the main people I focused on was like a lot of Scott Stenwick's techniques of like working planetary magic and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I would do a lot of that, and I would just here and there, just off and on. I wasn't, I'm far from like, the world's greatest magician or anything like that. I was, for a long time I was quite lazy and wasn't doing everything. I just kind of would do it once in a while whenever I saw a need that I felt was enough to have a magical intervention. But as far as that goes, yeah, I sometimes lately it's been angelic, so I've done like some Shem workings, but I'm really just kind of an out of the book guy. Sometimes I'll go a little bit farther. I mean, I'll try to, like, if I think of an innovation, I'll put it on the blog, and sometimes I'll do sigils and stuff like that. Or I'll incorporate. Sometimes I'll just like cross different systems and try to like one example is like using like a sigil to help you actually achieve a better initiation into one of the Sephira or Sephirot, excuse me. So that's kind of like my approach. I'm just like, well, let me see this, mix and match. I don't see why this couldn't be used with this, but it tends to work, like if you kind of know what you're doing, you kind of know the background, you'll figure it out, you'll start getting some results here and there, and maybe you'll be way better than me, which chances are you will be, and just you'll be one of those people who you see something to full visual manifestation, and then doors will move and all of that sort of thing. But so yeah, that's kind of my approach. I skew kind of angelic of late. I've done some Shem stuff in addition to all this other stuff. I also, just real quick, I want to say I also worked a little bit with this new system called UI Zelian magic, which is based off of like the 6th and 7th books of Moses, which I know is like part of has been incorporated into more ATR religions, African traditional religions. That's sort of been shifted a little bit into that, or it was incorporated into that. I'm not sure which one. I want to say it was hoodoo. I'm not an expert on that sort of thing. In case you can't tell, folks at home, I'm white, so I just don't have that much exposure to that. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. For those listening, if you want to see the video of this, go to hermeticpodcast.com and I'll have the video up there. Usually I just put videos for like exclusive subscribers, but I don't know. I change my mind on things all the
Yeah,
time and just go with the
sure.
flow like yourself often. And we're here to serve people. It sounds, this idea of being a purist to a tradition of depurism, or of any structural paradigms for any magical practice or religion being something that should be self-contained or self-limited or restricted in some way. But then there's the reality of what we're talking about and doing, which is working with this sort of flow of energy or spirit. And generally, in my experience, so the most definitive quality that I've experienced of spirit tends to be a kind of transgressive movement. Spirit doesn't really seem to care about your limits and boundaries, or like, if you go pray to a rock shrine down here, that the First Nations built under the totem poles, or in Ireland, they don't really seem to be like, wait, you're not part of our religion, or you're not
Yeah.
part of our faith, right?
Shame on you. Yeah.
I've never
They don't
had
wag
that
their finger at you.
experience. No, and so, we
Yeah.
have this competing values of limiting structures or self-contained structures, and then transliminal experiences of it, and we see quite a vying for that. And so, how do you place yourself within your approach to Enochian and the ritual works that you've just massively undertaken? For those who don't know, for the Liber Loga and Gebofal is a 49-day epic massive ritual that sort of bookends the Enochian system with the 19-day initiation.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I'll sort of answer that in two parts. So, yeah, I mean, when if we're talking models, I'm definitely more of a, I've sort of somewhere between probably pantheism and panentheism, with a lot of, polytheistic, and angelic and spiritual, modules, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that sort of pop up out of that consciousness of the divine. But yeah, I haven't found that either. One of the sub things that I was trying to do with this working was, not just in general, it was trying to do it to get into, do a deepening of the initiation into Chokmah, which is the Sefer of wisdom for people who don't know. Trying to get that initiation deepened, but also trying to, I'm hoping that it will turn into a rainbow body experience, which is from a completely different system. It's from, Tibetan Buddhism, and it's a totally different thing. But so to me, it's like, I think that, I don't think that, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think spirit matter cares too much. As far as like, whether, purist approach or whatever, I mean, it's tough because you don't know what gets lost in translation. Now you've done a bunch of Golden Dawn stuff that I haven't really touched any of that. I've never, I mean, I've learned basically when I started learning magic, I learned it, like a lot of people my age, learned it out of Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig. I went through a lot of those things,
Yeah,
and
that's what I
it
did.
was, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I never had like went on to like a full, order-based approach. I've been kind of solitary for most of my,
Yeah.
practice, and it's probably served me well because,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
it was almost impossible most of
Yeah,
our lives to find any of such orders. Like, it was a fluke that I found one in 94, 93,
yeah,
right? And then by
yeah. And you started
95,
young.
well, yeah, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
my first initiation was into yoga in 88, and then
Mm,
in 1991 I got my second initiation, which is the adult initiation. And and I was meditating twice a daily from age 7 till so onward.
that is
And
hardcore for
that's
a
yeah.
Westerner.
Yeah, though
Yeah.
actually not very strange if you grew up in the community I grew up in, which was the Maharishi transcendental meditation world. For better or worse, they emphasize meditation, and that's the main thing. And it's essentially what Christians would call centering prayer, the repeating of a
Hmm.
single mantra like in Cloud of Unknowing. At the
Yeah.
lower levels, of course, then you get into the 22 cities and all of that like my parents had done. And then you start bouncing up in the air, bouncing
Damn.
around, bump,
I was
bump,
gonna
bump,
say
bump.
all 22 of them.
What's crazy
Yeah.
is, when I was like 5 and I'd sit on my dad's lap and he'd do the flying mantra, like you see these people, they're bouncing higher than like I've ever been able to bounce, even at peak fitness. So like
Hmm.
there is something to that technique and the bringing of the Kundalini down, then the burst of energy. And
Yeah.
so anyway,
I don't doubt it. I
looks
don't
like
doubt it.
fun. But yeah, no, I did find the Golden Dawn. That was cool, and I found a good group of people. So, but
Yeah.
there wasn't. Yeah, it's not the same thing as this kind of Enochian that we're talking about now. The Golden Dawn didn't have access to any of the stuff that we have today, and so
Exactly.
really, really, the Golden Dawners still haven't really begun, in my opinion, to look at how to incorporate this stuff fully. Aaron Leach is probably at the forefront of it because he's one of the few people who considers himself a deep purist, but also is a senior GD guy. And so, and it's sort of interesting, actually. Here's one of those little things that comes up there. He was telling you about wearing your ring, your wonder ring.
Hmm.
Wonder
Yeah.
ring in
Yeah.
the sky
Wondering.
by the power of
Captain Planet,
angels.
right? Wasn't that it?
It's awesome. It's awesome. I can't wait to you know find one I like. Who
Hmm.
made yours?
Oh, I got it. I couldn't even tell you off, but I'll look it up if you want. I
Hmm.
can find. I want to say it was eBay or Etsy or something like that. It's very well done. It's like, gold plated. Obviously, I'm
Yeah.
not made of money, but yeah, yeah. Have you made like the wax sigillum?
Well, all my tools like that were stolen a while back,
Ah,
But I've
I'm
got
sorry,
three.
brother.
I've got three wax ones. Actually, I just cast a new one up there in a metal thing. I'm comparing between the plasticky ones and the metal ones right now, but I've got three cast now, and I'm just gonna engrave them. Yeah.
Yeah,
But for the
yeah,
little ones, I'm probably just gonna get the ones from Jason Newcomb
yeah.
because I
That's
don't want to
hardcore.
make four little ones.
Well,
And
I wound up being able to do that, but for the longest time, I just practiced. I'm like, okay, I'll just put the design on there and I'll figure it out. I'll make it work somehow.
mm,
But what I said was like, I'll, but after a while, I'm just like, well, let me just try. Let me see what I can do with this. And it was really exacting work, but eventually I was able to get something kind of approaching it off of those little 4-inch discs. It's tough.
crazy.
It's tough, but there's some kind of compulsion I have, I guess, to keep on doing it. Maybe it's an angelic one. I don't know.
For sure. I'm trying to get the rippling off the top side, right? Which is why I swapped out
Mm.
to a metal one and recast to see if it's not much better. Did you have any success dealing with the rippling?
Yeah, I didn't really get much. What I just used like a pie tin, a little, you know, 4-inch one, but I didn't I didn't get it too bad. I think the wax melts at like 160 degrees or something like that Fahrenheit. But what I would do is I would try to like take it outside and just leave it outside overnight, but I didn't get as much rippling.
Hmm.
Or if I did, I would just like say, well, that's the bottom, and that's where I'll like put in but the bottom part of the pie tin itself was flat and it seemed to be okay. So I didn't get too much of that. I didn't go for like the perfect thing, but
Yeah.
I've made a few of them. I just sort of have given a few of them away. I haven't done like the whole thing. I'm talking about the big one, obviously. The latest one I did, I used I actually used Enochian letters wherever I could instead of English letters because I was,
I was
sneaky like
thinking
that.
of that for one of them, for one of them,
Yeah,
and I also am definitely on the back. I'm gonna put the Agla in Hebrew.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not my fault. D's Hebrew sucked.
It's funny, like one of the things, and I haven't put this on my blog yet, or maybe I did. I think I put it under the Monas Hieroglyphica one. He was like so excited about the Kabbalah. And I think he just had like a couple of ideas about it, but or like got it like secondhand. I do not think he knew that much about the Kabbalah at all.
Yeah,
And what I realized is like so this is like ultra nerdy level.
yeah.
So like if you because if you're reading the MH in order to understand Enochian, then you're really peak Enochian nerd. But at any rate, what I saw was he had this diagram where he had the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and he would add up the 1 and the 2 that comes to 3, and then the 1 and the 3 that comes to 4, and then the 1 and 4 that comes to, and he would do all of this, and I'm like, okay, well that's great, and he's like, and this comes to 30, and this means this and that, and I'm like, okay, well that's nice, and then for whatever reason, he did that again, but he did that with 1, 2, 3, 2. And I'm like, what is this? This didn't make any sense to me. And then I'm just like, oh my God, he's doing bad gematria. He is making he's just saying the word, the Yod Hey Vav Hey, and he's saying the Yod is 1, the hey is 2, the vav is 3, and then the second hey is also 2. And that's what that is. And
Mm,
that's my theory on it anyway, is like
wow.
he didn't know that all of these letters actually already have a different value involved. But
But that
that's
would
my
be
theory about it.
weird. That would be weird because
Yeah.
Greek is the same. Like they're parallel. Like yeah,
Yeah.
alpha,
But
beta, gamma, aleph, bet, gimel,
yeah,
same numbers,
exactly.
same shit.
Yeah, but I don't think he knew enough. I don't think he knew
Huh.
enough apsophy to do that, to know. But that's just my theory, man.
Yeah, it's possible. Like it's entirely possible.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
no, it's just I mean they had limited access to information. There was also, like Judaism was illegal in England and a lot of places.
Yep, yep.
I'm sure Jewish texts, Hebrew texts were not safe to necessarily have and all of that jazz. So yeah,
Yeah.
and who would he have learned more from? I mean, he didn't have access to Giovanni Mirandola, so he
No.
was
I
just
th- I think he knew Pastel, or he must have met him somehow, or just read a book that referenced something, or some of those techniques. But it's interesting. I watched Sledge's videos on that. I'm like, man, this all comes together in what D was thinking.
Did you know what's really crazy is it was discounted for the longest time that Raymond Lull had any connection with Kabbalah because he never actually made explicit reference, but he had his circle, his spheres, and his whole theosophy of the spheres that was very interesting. And then finally, it was recently in academic terms that Moshe Adel discovered he was in touch with a Kabbalist in Italy the whole time,
Mm,
getting taught and getting information given to him. He just didn't reference it in his Christianizing of the principles that he saw within it. Um, so it's
some people just know
interesting.
how to keep a secret, I guess.
Well, I mean, or it's sort of important. Like, Bruno learned that too late.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, come to
Sure.
Rome and tell us about all your discoveries. Sounds like a party. I'll be like, it'll be a hot time. Oh,
Might even say smoking.
oh God, yeah. Can you imagine? Like, yeah, just like it reminds me of like the just come to Rome thing is like Dave Chappelle said the black man's trick of say, hey, no, just get out of the car. I just want to talk to you. I just want to talk to you, man. And he's like, I didn't want to talk to that person. I want to fuck him up. Rome. Anytime someone invites you to Rome, be careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Anyway, the yeah, the Kabbalah stuff is interesting. Jim, I mean, I'm not a hugely obsessed with the numbers in comparison with other words and stuff. I think it is interesting, but yeah, I mean, it definitely speaks to a very essentialist metaphysics that I don't necessarily think serves us in every case. I like what
Yeah.
Justin Sledge said the other day when someone asked him on the live stream, um, are you a continental philosopher or Anglo-American analytical one? And he's like, well, I do both because I do philosophy. I was like, thank you,
Yep.
because like people are constantly like people. I've got right there. I've got some a pile. I've got John Caputo and Jacques Derrida. Oh, heresy,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
I've got Alain Badiou's book on Saint Paul, and he's a French ethicist, and a whole just a pile of things like continental and mixed. But yeah, we don't just these aren't ideologies that you subscribe to like in politics, and that's one of the things I fear about with with this idea that we should completely abandon university education because it's all infiltrated by Marxism or something like that. That's going to lead to like that would lead to the loss of so much knowledge. Like, first of
Yeah.
all, what philosophy is, what the study of it is. There's a lot of talk I get from people asking me about ontology and what that is, and that's what I wrote a lot about is ontotheology and that sort of rejection of it through the Heideggerian and Gadamerian traditions. But if we reject all this stuff, people are going to fail to understand what it is in its whole. And we're seeing that already. People starting to just cut these things up. It's like these are thinkers. They're just trying to give us ideas about how to think. And those
Hmm.
methodologies are tools, right? You don't just pick up a hammer and say, hey, I'm a hammer guy. Fuck that bandsaw over there. Anyone who uses a bandsaw is a heretic, right? I'm a
Exactly.
hammer guy. It's like,
Right.
what are you talking about? Build a
Right.
fucking house and shut up. So did you do
Get
the
it done.
19-day initiation ritual?
Yeah, well, in my what I had read is that it was 18 days, but who cares, you know? But yeah, I did to imprint the furniture on you and all that jazz. Yeah, I did an 18-day version of that based
Where,
on I
where
want to say it was Leech, but
you
go ahead,
the,
brother.
the one I'm
Sorry.
thinking of is where you write your own, you know, conjurations and write your own. You have to write an entire book, and on the 19th day you put on the linen robe that you only wear once, and you never use the
Yeah,
book again. So you write these prayers to the main spirits
I
of
don't
the
think so. I
tablets.
think
Oh,
that's something
okay, cool.
I'll have to keep it. Well, the version I had was 18 days, and you're talking you sort of go from like the bottom of the hierarchy of the lesser angels and the cherubs and
I think you
then
start
the
with a few
kings.
secret names.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I did that. Then I'll have to look into it because you know what? I've been doing this kind of quickly and just in my spare time as well. So this is like I want to say like maybe a year and a half ago that I would have been touching something like that. I'll have to go back and look, but I did a version of that. The way I've learned from Jason Louv and I've learned from that Enochian master class that Stenwick and Leach and Newcomb had. And I know that the 18-day ritual came up and it was something that I did, but I'm trying to remember. But you're mentioning a 19-day ritual. I'm like, oh, is this the same
Yeah.
thing? I was working
Yeah, it's
off.
the same thing Leach talks about. I mean, they talk
Okay.
about it in different ways, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Um, it's Leach's. I still can't wrap my head around Leach's methodological approaches to a lot of things, but again, his work is quite helpful.
It's
I
excellent.
like I
Yeah.
like what Frater Yehida here did. He seems Yehida seems less upset with the fact that he's a GD person. He's like accepting of the fact that he's a GD person and that
Sure.
there's this other more traditional Enochian system, whereas Leach sort of seems like a little I get the feel like he's a little embarrassed that he does GD Enochian or knows how to do it, and therefore he pushes this the D perspective. For example, you can't do anything without the ring. In the GD, you don't use the Enochian ring, right? You wear your 5/6 lament, and that's what allows you to
Okay.
do Enochian stuff, more or less. I mean, that's the only possible justification for that's when you're brought into the tablets is during the 5/6 initiation. There's not really any reference to them in any of
Okay.
the other initiations until the 5 = 6, though they're used to bring in the forces. So
Right.
they're operative, but not explicitly mentioned in the outer order,
Right. Right.
but their
Hmm.
power is used. And then
Yeah. I
after
mean,
5/6, it's like you have a solar initiation. The idea is you're then meant to you do whatever and go into
right.
the vault of the adepti and do whatever. And a lot of people don't realize that the tablets are even a part of that because you're not meant to do Enochian work in the vault, but they're still in it sort of. It's complicated. We'll talk more about in the future with when I talk to some other people
Sure.
GD nut
No
jobs
worries.
like myself. But I've
I
been exploring the Enochian purism, for lack of a better word, let's call it. I think we should just call it angelic magic, and trying to show people how the easiest way to get into it is because just even Leach's books, all these books that we have, none of them actually you could just give to someone and say, hey, just start. Like you can't work
yeah.
through them like with Don Craig's book or any of these
Yeah.
other beginner
No
books.
way.
Not a
No way.
chance. You're so
No way.
fucked if you do. You have to compare with all this shit. Like before you know it, you're looking through PDFs of Dee's original handwriting and going, wait, what is it that was said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I that the Ryan, when he asked me about this on his Praxis Behind the Obscure podcast, he was asking me like, well, what do you think about this, about, how to do it? I'm like, you know, I would say like learn the classical elements, get a handle on them, then learn some astrology, learn the basics of astrology, learn the signs, learn the planets and stuff like that, and that'll give you like a foundation to start thinking about and studying the heptarchy and learning the concept of planetary hours and stuff like that. But you see, like all of these are like foundational stuff. So if I had to
Yeah.
write a book on this, I'd be like, okay, what sort of things could I do to make it like, okay, this is kind of what the system is like. It's like super complicated, I'm going to give you like the building blocks. Like my idea, if I had to write a book on this, first of all, I hate writing books alone, so I'd probably want to find a co-author to help me out
Well,
because it's just like,
you should write a book on this. I
well,
heard
thank
you
you.
say on Ryan's podcast. By the way, everyone needs to go watch Praxis Behind the Obscure episode with Cliff. The first time I found Ryan was through your first Enochian episode with him.
Oh,
So what
awesome.
people
Awesome.
really need to do, yeah, and I took issues with something you said about psychedelics, which
Oh,
was,
I just haven't done them. So
yeah, well,
that's my only thing about
I
it.
didn't know that. I just saw a bone and ran in to bite it. No, but no,
Sorry.
I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, did you know about this thing?" And that's how he and I did my episode with him. I think it was the one right after that or something
Hmm.
like that. And we've now, next thing you know, we're like texting all night long, making up hilarious gag songs about David Griffin and that sort of thing. Well,
Okay.
when he's going to bed at night, like if he's like stoned or had a drink, that's when I'm waking up in the morning. So we have really interesting conversations because while he's stoned or drunk and falling asleep
Right.
or just tired,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not all just stoners, but I'm waking up. So and then reverse that cycle, so we talk at those two opposite things. So you can imagine the
Yeah.
kind of conversations we've been
It's
having.
hypnagogia versus whatever the opposite of hypnagogia is at the same time, with a little of what's the word, a catalyst of whatever happens to be in the system or not be in the system, or you're
Yeah.
recovering from what used to be in the system. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you showed your
Yeah.
tools on that last episode. People really should go check out that episode, and because this is when I found out you were on his right before you were doing mine. I'm like, well, this is great because that allows
Yeah, yeah.
you to lay out a bunch of the stuff post
Sure.
initiation and all of that. Oh, that's cool. Let's see that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
showed a lot of stuff there, and I was like,
Hmm.
that's good. So we can get into some tech. Can we see inside? No, we
Absolutely.
can't see inside,
Yeah,
can we?
yeah, you can see inside. Sure.
All right.
Yeah. So this is kind of what it looks like. This is all like handwritten
Oh
stuff.
dear Lord.
So yeah, it took me 7.5 months to get into all this. And it was annoying because like I started realizing like it was clearly not one person who was transcribing everything that Kelly was seeing. It's at least two, probably three or four people. And it's just like, oh, how do I compare this or that or the other thing? But I figured it out, and I eventually decided to adopt my own style, like the Doan, the letter R. I decided to. Are you still there? Just checking.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right, all
I'm
right. Yeah,
listening.
just checking. Sorry, you had frozen. And I didn't know if
Oh,
I had completely dumbfounded you or not. You had this look in your face like, yeah, exactly.
that's the
Like scream.
caption for YouTube now. You want to do a face or what? And they'll be like, I will try and Photoshop one of those things. It'll be
Sure.
the first. Oh my God. Oh, ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's like,
It's
yeah. I mean,
49. Can you just describe for people what the book
yeah.
is?
Okay. We'll get into brass tacks here. So yeah. So like this, it's assuming that more or less what we have from D is in order, and it's not always, sometimes it's like it's in some manuscript here that got the D's materials got split up and sold off to different people, and only now is it like kind of come together. But yeah, so the first part of the Enochian system is like the heptarchy, so you get the kings and the princes and their ministers. And the second part is supposed to be Gebofal, and then the third part is the watchtowers slash aethers. But this is considered to be the measure of the other two. Ooh. And it's interesting that they use that word measure because, and we'll get into that later, but just put a pin in that idea that they use the word measure. But the idea was that, okay, we're going to give you all of these leaves, and the first leaf that they get, I'm reading. This is where I did read a lot of the source material. This is where I did read scans of it on the Fergoff website. And I'll send you the link after we record this in case this is the same one Ryan has. But and I haven't been in contact with him other than to say thank you so much for saving all of this. But what Kelly is doing in the middle of this vision is he is basically being told each of the individual letters of the very first row of the first leaf of the entire book. So it's like if I were to say, CATDOG, and he has to go through each individual letter because he doesn't know the Enochian words and he can't just like write it down quickly. So he's saying them aloud and he's repeating after the angel. And then at the end of after 49 words have been transmitted, then the angel says, okay, now say it after me, say these entire words to me, in reply. So he does, and there other than just like a couple of minor differences, it's the same. So, but he's doing it in like, so okay, and it's not just like English letters, it's actually the Enochian words for the letters. So for people who don't know, like the letter R in Enochian is don, or don, and the letter T in Enochian is gizg. And I'm not even sure how those are pronounced, but it's GISG, if you're to spell it out in English. So the letters have kind of funky names, and they almost never, with the exception of the letter Jed, they actually don't have the actual English letter as part of the name of the letter that they represent.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird and bizarre, but anyway, so he gets all these, he gets the individual letters, then he says the phrase that goes with that entire first row, and row after row after row after row like this. So 49 entire rows like this of just words, words, words. And then they're like, okay, now do it again. And then this will be leaf, and then it turns out D got the numbering off by one, but it's, you figure this shit out, as you're doing it. But he starts, so then he gets the next one. And then at the end of row 40 on the B side of this, the back side, he's given, instead of given words, then suddenly he's just given letters again. But these letters, if you could kind of string them all together, it turns out that they're punctuated and that they actually make words on their own. So that's just leaf one. Then after that, so this is like, if you imagine like
And
a
that
grid,
is one page of your book.
That's one page. Yeah, it's this one, and I'll show it. I didn't get into detail, but I probably should have in the first thing. It's this thing, and I actually have it folded 4 times. So
Each
this
page?
is, I have just this first one, because
Okay.
this one is 4 feet by 4 feet,
Oh Lord.
that top one. And I spread it out on top of my table of practice, and I just, it was a whole thing, because like it just gets more and more insane, for anybody who's listening. Because what I did was, so I'll keep describing the book, and then we'll get to what I did. But like, it's like, so then the next one, they're like, okay, this one, we're going to give you a title of this half page, the page of this, and then the back page of the same leaf or sheet. They used the word leaf back then. It's kind of an older term, but yeah, we still know a leaf of paper. Oh, okay, it's a sheet of paper, But I don't know if Canada continues that tradition. I don't know enough of other dialects of English.
No, we
to know.
use cold sheets of ice bound
Yes.
in
Yes.
wolf
Like we had in
skin.
Minnesota.
Yeah, um,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
They keep
but
well in
I
our
know what you mean.
igloos.
Yeah. But at any rate, so yeah, so you're completing this. So then after that, they give them 20. I'm going to say 27 individual leaves with an A and B side. So you have to do it front and back of a 49 by 49 grid, and each side of the page has its own title that you also have to write down. And then so you're given all of this. And by the way, when you're doing this as part of the Gebofal, as part of making the book, you can't just copy it into Enochian letters. You also have to reverse everything, because it's like an Hebrew, a prototypical Hebrew, where you have to go right to left instead of left to right.
I just did one of the names of the ministers on my heptarchial sigil. I just switched 2 of the letters, and it's like, oh damn, I have to get the white out and do multiple coats over just to reverse those 2 letters, because you can do it with you'll do it with 6 names, and then the 7th you'll do 2 letters, and you're like, oh no, shit.
Yep, it's more of a pain in the ass when you do it on a piece of metal.
Oh God.
Which I've done.
Oh my God.
My Karmara one, I messed that one up.
Yeah,
but
that's what, so interesting. So my group has only been working with Karmara and Hagenol for the last month and a bit, and like just with them. And I've been bringing them as an introductory to this system, showing them how many different magical techniques and processes can be built into that learning of that, which is crucial. And so that's a very nice, easy way into that system. You can do it any day, any time. Work with these guys, and I asked them, for the first sigil we did, we used Stenwick's left to right
Hmm.
inscriptions of the name. And I asked Hagenel, I said, would you rather have them right to left? Does it matter? It was very deadpan answer, and it felt like a deadpan, when you get that deadpan energy, which was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, I can still read it, right?
Right,
So like
right.
if I wrote your name, if you and me wrote each
Yeah.
other's names backward and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" We'd look at each other like a little strange, realizing it was backwards,
I
but I
mean,
can
I
still
get, I get
read
what you're
it.
saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's definitely my name. Don't wear it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's kind of been my experience too. Like I know that the central square on my holy table, like everything is backwards because for whatever reason, like the English letters, okay, those are supposed to be reversed. But then it turns out when they did that central square, which is really a
The
3 by
tablet of
4,
union.
no, no, the
Oh, the
the
central
table
square. Yeah,
itself.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
central.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it turns out that those were actually written with the names of the Enochian letters, so those wouldn't be reversed. Well, I reversed them because
Oh,
whatever. I was doing it
oh,
out of a book, like everybody else. It doesn't matter.
heresy.
Well, that what I. Yeah, I mean,
They
you
can
heard
still
you heard
read
my
it.
interview. Yeah, yeah, you heard my interview. Like if you kind of know the way it's supposed to be reversed out, it's like it's like giving somebody any kind of cipher, and of course D was really into those. It's as long as you know the technique to get it right, it doesn't matter. Exactly like you said.
I used to
So,
write a lot about and study a lot of the pronunciation linguistics. My first year at university was all linguistics, and then I was wanting to go into philology, and then I failed my syntax exam, and I was like, "Fuck that!"
mm,
I moved straight into semiotics, much more
yeah,
leeway.
yeah, yeah,
you don't need
definitely.
to you don't need to be smart to study semiotics. Um, but the thing I found out when I was doing work at Kelly's Tower in Prague, which was a powerful experience for me. So I asked the angels I was working with there for a week or more a lot of questions, because they were very present there, which makes sense. And I was
Yeah.
asking about pronunciation, and that was where I got a very clear response. Like they basically said, "Look, you all sound like babies." And I was at first I would have been taken aback, but I knew
You're
exact.
like,
I'm the
you weren't like,
communications like that
motherfucker.
are multi-level, right? It's like because I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to figure out, should it be ehenub or ehaneba or
yeah. Right, right.
veorasaji or vorsk,
Yeah,
and yeah, that was the impression they got. They're like, you sound like sort of babies, like, and we
that makes
understand
so
what we
much sense.
understand what yeah, it does. And
Yeah,
so all of a sudden I felt relieved as well. I was like, okay,
yeah.
so we should all just chill out a bit and get on with what the purpose of the communication is. Like when you speak
That's,
with someone who doesn't speak English as their first language, you can make a problem of it, or you
yep.
can just like get what mean they.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Like, and that's the thing too. Like one of the first things I posted on the blog was just 111 prayers. Right. And I'm just like,
As one
look,
does.
yeah, as one does. Right. I clearly, I had like some idea for a manuscript and then I just set it aside, I'm just like, I'll just publish it. I'll just put it on the blog. Chances are everything on that I'll ever publish will just be something I've put some version of on the blog before. So, hey, people get free stuff. But yeah, there's no word that I could find in Enochian for me, you know, but there's a word for I. And I said, well, if I say to you, give I this, that, drink you have, then you would know what I meant,
Yeah,
you would say
yeah,
no, but
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, give either, may I have a piece of toast? Oh, okay, yes, you may have a piece of toast. I know what you meant, and then a child would correct it, but yeah, I got the same. I got the same. It's like they know. They're not
Well,
dumb.
even if we're like a little baby who's just like and slams their fist on the table pointing at the toast,
Hmm.
if we do that with angels, I'm sure some Enochian magicians at some point, I'm sure we all sounded at that point, so like that at some point, we're doing the pentagrams and rending the veils and then do the call, and some Enochian angels hanging around, our spirits are just like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we know we're here to help. I did notice that in my experience with the Heptarchial angels, that they did seem like very humoring. Like they were like, okay, we hear you. We know what you're up to. We get it.
Yeah.
And I think Stenwick and those who are right when they say they're very friendly or germane to a magician's purposes. That they
Yeah.
did feel that way.
It's
But
almost. It's like once you know how to do it, it's almost way too easy. Working with them. like now, will you always get what you ask for? No, but they're still there, like getting the vision. The weird thing is like getting the visions are just like clockwork. I don't know what it's like for you,
Really?
but
No, I want to hear more.
so like, yeah, I mean, I'm not like great at pretty much anything when it comes to magic, but I'm okay at a lot of stuff. So like but when I'll do the call, like I've always like pretty much everybody who I've done the call with, they've been able to have an experience. And when and it varies, right? Like one person has pretty bad ADHD, and but also is very smart, and their mind is always running. So when I made the call, they said, oh, it's like, I said, so what was it like for you? And they said, well, it was like everything got really quiet. And that was a unique experience for them, right? Another person like got this feeling of warmth on their face, but I have yet to find somebody who says I've got nothing.
Yeah.
I've felt nothing. So that's just, it's like, that's why I say when it's like clockwork, it's like, yeah, you're not going to get, like me, I'll have the vision of this, I'll have the vision of that, and I'll get this intent. But I've been through it, and I kind of have done the work, to make the furniture. So clearly, at least I'm trying over and over again. So the angels are probably even a little bit more accommodating, just for trying with a sincere heart. But I have yet to find somebody who's gotten like zero.
Yeah.
It's, yeah,
We, I
kind of
mean,
weird.
we just did our a cyber magic working with the king and prince that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very curious to see the results. And it was the first one where I actually used an Enochian call,
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing wrong with building up to symbolical working with straight contemplation. I'm a big fan of tarot contemplations and basic contemplative work.
Sure.
Uh, but I used the second call following the experiment Stenwick. Well, it's not it's what he does, but using it as an experiment for the invocatory micro experience rather than first and second or the first call. Obviously not referring to call 0 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which in GD style we just go full Harpocrates and embrace the ultimate silence state for that.
Sure.
Obviously, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially with the significance of Harpocrates and silence in the GD ethos and in the initiations is really crucial to what's going on in the ceremony. I don't know if you've ever studied the initiations.
I've seen like, certain things, and then the gods set fighting and stuff. I'm not like an
Yeah.
expert in I've seen bits and pieces, but I've never had like the full on experience yet.
Yeah, so silence has a big role in the theology, but
Sure.
also in the operational understanding of how the astral currents work. But
Mm-hmm.
so when I did the call, some of the feedback from the people, and there was but we're spread out around the world doing it on Zoom.
Yeah.
For the first time for my first time for me trying full on Enochian on that. And one feedback was like, well, everyone had a interesting experience for sure. Everyone, one thing that was very interesting was everyone felt warmth on their left hand and on their forehead, which is interesting because that's where I was holding that's where I was holding my sigil and my
Yeah.
conjurations. Yeah. And obviously, lots going on with the whole third
Yeah.
eye projection.
Third eye.
One guy,
Yeah.
one guy said, actually, I won't say who, but he has a podcast. You got to go on his podcast next and tell your
Okay.
whole story, because he'll be like, no, go back to, okay, so we were at high school, then college, what happened? That's I've stopped asking people about their spiritual biographies because he's doing it way
Yeah.
better than me. So
Okay.
go on the LVX files next.
Yeah, I've listened to
yeah.
his. So
So
yeah,
yeah,
if he's interested, yeah, I mean, I'll.
he has to be. It's a
Okay.
rule. No, he described the Enochian as instantly sort of making like locking him in a space. Like there was,
Yeah.
and a couple people mentioned that feeling of the Enochian all of a sudden came in and they're just like locked in. I'm thinking about your ADHD guy. Yeah, very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Something very interesting is going on there.
Yeah.
With because why would these words that some people have never even heard before
Yeah.
and may not, and what is belief? It doesn't matter if they believe in it or not. What is it? It should be gibberish for by any rational standards.
Yeah.
Why would this gibberish have that power? Is it because
Yeah,
I've been doing it for so long? I don't think so.
yeah, you're telling me this isn't a language, and yet we can pretty much do a linguistic analysis of this and find, oh, you're telling me it's a cipher, but it's clearly not. It's like, okay, look, it's something. We don't know what it is or how or whatever, but it's working, and it's working like clockwork. Yeah, I'll actually be curious about this because I'm going to be presenting on this at the MENSA World Gathering in Houston. So I'm, a little spoiler alert.
You
So if you,
smart motherfucker.
but what I'll do is I'll be doing this, and the thing is like, I've been in Mensa for a while, but if you you get all types. You get some people who do it just to have the card, and some people who are very, very spiritual, other people who are complete atheists, or some people who are agnostic, and just you get all types because it's just like how it is. You
Hey,
get all kinds of smart people.
those
Go ahead.
people need somewhere to go and talk with each other because no one else wants to talk with them.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes if they're completely obnoxious, right? But there is something to be said for that. Like there's, or kind of the vice
Of
versa too,
course.
right? Like nobody can understand me, what the fuck.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, but like but the thing is like there's a little problem you can get. So, and some ensigns have this, some don't, where sometimes they've always been the smartest one that they know, and so they've never had any reason to do something, to believe in something, when their great intellectual powers that be have not led them to that conclusion. So if you get like an uber
Yeah.
skeptic here in the audience, that there's going to be like three kinds of the people in the audience. They're going to, or maybe four. So let's say the first is magicians. The second is people who are just kind of curious about magic. The third is going to be the hyper, Christian folks who want to like be disruptive and, say something. And I already know what I'm going to say to them, and then it's going to be that problem will be taken care of.
You're going to say,
But
look, we're invoking the apocalypse. Get with the program.
I'm just going to say, get out. That's what I'm going to say. Get out, and get out
Oh,
now.
really?
Yeah,
If you're an
absolutely.
ultra Christian,
I will not tolerate it. I'd be like, get out, And if they continue causing a problem, I'm going to say, get out. God is telling you to get out. And then it's going to get a big laugh, and then they're going to be humiliated, and then it'll go. But anyway, that's assuming the worst. You have to
you
plan
could
for the
just
worst
start
and then hope for the best.
vibrating with your eyes closed. That'd probably do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, there's the chaos magic approach, right? Like if you say piss off, that's the quickest way to get rid of somebody. But at any rate, and then there will be the people who are just skeptical and who just don't want to believe it. And I'm going to give them the option up front. I'm going to say, look, if you don't want to be part of this magic, this is I will have this part where you can ask questions about everything I've presented about the system, and then after that you may go, and it will only be people who want to actually experience the call or see what it's like, and that'll be the thing, because that way, the people who want to be disruptive are already gone, hopefully right away. And then the people who are skeptical and just don't give a crap about this are gone. But people who are curious, or at least, well, they want to see if, feel smug when it doesn't work, they'll at least have some experience too. But and now keep in mind, this is a very small minority of people in most people are just way more chill about that, but
Yeah.
there's always that element. And I'm sure you found this, in Golden Dawn areas too, where there's a certain percentage of assholes,
I found
so
this in life. Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that funny? It's like people are people regardless of
Yeah.
whatever else is going on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I did my MDiv at Vancouver School of Theology and UBC during the last years of my inner order GD stuff. So I got a very
Mhm.
different experience of life in the spiritual community at a theological college, of course, and very wide range of stuff. Definitely some people there. Well, you have all perspectives there. So
Yeah,
I'm aware of the issues you're talking about. It's like, hey, this should be okay because we're all Christians. Like you're not the right kind of Christian, or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, exactly,
One
exactly.
professor got on to probably figured out I was up to some occult type stuff and took a disliking to me as a result. But
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
I got through it anyway, despite that. So I'm very very excited and impressed by the presentation to Mensa. It sounds like you have a very smart approach to doing it too. I really hope that you film this properly.
I hope
That'd
it
be
can be filmed.
great.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't have a camera or any setup like that, but I'll definitely have the slides ready. But
What
and then maybe it'll just be stuff of legend, and I'll make stuff up every time I retell it. But
that's
yeah,
always fun. I'm
that's always
very
fun.
curious about what you said though. It almost slipped by me. It was something about the idea that Mensa people have perhaps never had spirituality or any sort of faith-based uh, understanding presented to them in a way by someone as and as smart as them, or in a way that would challenge them. Is part of the idea that you're presenting a spiritual practice to these people who might not have seen one that's ever challenged them intellectually?
So okay, so this is like I'm trying not to step on feet at the same time as I'm trying to be honest and also fulsome in my comments. So what I would say is like there are some people, regardless, whether they're in Mensa or not, but let's say you're pretty smart. It's like if you're, I have a family member like this, I won't say who it is, but they have always been the smartest person that they have known. And it's very, very difficult to convince them that something that they believe in, spiritual or not, is wrong, or to take issue with that, or to try to bring it to their attention as something that they may want to reconsider. Because they don't, they, if you're always the smartest person you've ever known, then you will always, it's like you can create, it's like you're, using Kabbalistic terms, it's like you're stuck in Hode,
Mhm.
right? It's like you have built these massive, immense structures around your mind so that nothing will get in. And but really, what that is it's a big and intellectual defense, and it feels like it's up here, but really it's right here around the heart. It's actually you're using your mind to like protect your heart from anything that could disturb it. So there are people who are like very boldly atheist or very boldly fundamentalist Christian or fundamentalist whatever. I don't want to just pick on the Christians here, but who are very strong in their beliefs, and I mean anybody who like takes it to an extreme, who they want, it's like they understand the form of the religion but not the spirit, or they understand the form of intellectual curiosity but not the spirit of it. Like I'm intellectually curious about this stuff so I can build this structure of understanding. It doesn't
Right.
matter if it's religious or spiritual, or if it's atheistic or agnostic, or if it's just whatever the case may be. They're trying to like armor themselves, and that's what I'm saying, and you'll get that. But with if you're getting a bunch of Mensans around, some of them are just, most of them, the vast majority are the most cool, open-minded people you'll ever meet. But there is
That's good.
an element, because you're accepting people just based on an IQ score and basically not being a complete sociopath, because your sociopathy will out and you'll get arrested and stuff like that. But then there's a small minority who, a little bit of a chip on their shoulder maybe, and I mean, I won't say that I've never been guilty of having a chip on my shoulder, and that's what growing up
Well,
is about.
especially if you're a smart kid who has to
Yeah,
sit there watching idiots surpass you because of uh social graces, birth status, or money.
that
That
could definitely be a
well,
factor.
yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of smart people get
a
surpassed
lot of
by
people do.
others. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, even there's the famous business school thing, right? They
yeah.
want people below the top students. Yeah, they
Right,
want they want
right.
if you get too good a grade in business school, they don't want you because they want someone
Mm,
who knows how to go party and socialize and network. I mean, that's way
yeah,
more important in business, actually, as we know as adults, right? It's like,
it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? Isn't
yeah,
that phrase?
absolutely. I once in
So
a while I get film work, and I may have some more on the table. I don't know, but
cool.
it's always through. It's not because I'm the most qualified person for it, and like often I feel I'm more qualified than the people that get the jobs I should get. You see that from the hacky occult and theological stuff in shows, right? It's like, oh, they should have
Yeah,
hired me. But it's because it's about who you fucking know, always,
yeah, yeah.
nonstop.
Yeah, it's easier, you go with the devil you know versus the devil you don't, and even if
Yeah.
that other devil is, better, or,
Well,
none of us are devils, but you know what I mean. But
and
yeah,
now
let me,
now we're in that's the problem of the whole our political crony political systems that we're
sure.
all the whole fucking world's suffering under right now, right?
If it's a popularity contest, then the person with the controversial opinion is not going to be popular, even if they may be right, you know?
Exactly.
But yeah, let me circle back really quickly to, because I feel
Please.
like we left the Loga thing on the table. So yeah,
Yeah.
so after those 27 pages, then it's something's interesting, and I think it's somewhere around, if you're doing it backward, doing the calls backwards. This is the infamous abyssal aether known as Zax. It's around then, if you're doing it in that order, you realize, okay, this page matches up with this weird aether, where you're crossing the abyss, if you supposedly, if you make it past there into the next one, which is zip. But then all of a sudden it turns out that every other letter is missing, more or less, for the next however many pages, like 20 or so. And then finally there's the last one, which is associated, if you assume one call to one leaf, then it's five 3x7 tables, and except it's taken from 112 letters. Now, if you do the math on that, there's a problem, because 3 times 5 is 15, times 7 is 105. So you have to figure out how to subtract, and how to do so carefully. So what I did for that was, I mentioned the weirdness of those Enochian letter names. I said, if I see that letter spelled out, I'm going to actually subtract that into the actual letter that stands for. So the letter for the Enochian letter R is don, pronounced don. So if I see the Enochian letters DON, or the equivalent of those, then I said, okay, instead of writing that out, I'm going to just put in the letter R. That actual letter R.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
easier
sense.
to see if you do that. Yeah, but that was my approach. I don't.
That's an
I'm sure.
innovation.
Yeah, it's a little innovation. Well, I'm not sure how other people do it or have done it. I know that some people, I've seen some people say, look, that first part of that is actually the word loga, but D
Mm.
says, well, I've received 21 words here, and so maybe now received. But like, if you look at the actual document, it's like, a few sentences here, and the angel says, this is called loga, which means the speech of God. This book is loga, it's the speech of God. And then here's this phrase, and then just a teeny amount of back and forth, and then the angel says, okay, here's, it's the phrase, the 112 letters starts off with the word loga, and then several other words.
Mm.
But so some people take the approach to say, just take off that first word, and then you'll be okay. You can, and if you look at the documents, it's like not clear whether or not this letter is repeated. So if it's not repeated, then you get down to loga is actually 8 letters, but maybe it's 113 instead of 112. So other people have other ideas about it. I'm just telling you what I did, because that explanation didn't sit right with me. Like, oh, because yeah,
Yeah.
okay, it's entirely possible D can like miscount the number of letters. I don't know. He's
Yeah.
or the number of words. He's doing this shit for like 6 years. He's in the middle of like this massive transmission. So anyway, so yeah, I wrote all of those out. And then my approach to doing this is, they say, this needs to be covered in blue. It needs to be bound into a book, and it needs to be in blue silk, and bound in blue silk. And then it needs to have this stuff in gold on the front. So I used I used gold paint, and in a spray paint. And then in addition to that, I also tried my best to get gold leaf on top of that, with some success. I'm not, I'm no expert. Like I say, I'm okay at a lot of stuff. And this is clearly just an okay job titling the book. But what I did is because I kind of wanted it to last a long time, I used scrapbooking stuff. And it is a book. It's a book. It's kind of a, cheesy-ish looking book, but I used like a scrapbook photo album type of thing, and it's technically bound. It's bound in there. I can unbind it if I need to, but the letter leaves are bound in there. And I've got and it's all kept in plastic, so it'll be preserved for a while anyway, I
Yeah.
hope. And then that'll, that's what the book is. So you bind it, and then you get to the working, which is its whole other thing.
I mean,
Long,
first, do you see
yeah.
it as a talisman? Is it a talisman to you?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, and especially when you're working with it, right? Like you mentioned how other people were feeling, the seal in their hands when you had it in your hand. It's very much like that. So it's kind of like what I would do is I would like put a hand on top of one of the sides of the leaf, and then I would like have my foot. It's like I'm like an airline pilot. I have my foot on this seal and my hand,
Yeah,
just doing the
so
whole thing.
you incorporated the heptarchial foot seal process
Yeah,
into
yeah.
Loga, but that's also one of your innovations, right?
I don't know. I think that part is not in that original Leech document. I was working off of Leech's stuff, but I modified it a bit. He had like a reversal of just the first and last leaf, and I just said, well, just do them all in backwards order. Do them in a reverse order, and you'll be fine.
Hmm.
So that was my approach. I don't, who knows who's right, but that was his thing, and I'm doing is building off of him. But yeah, as far as like in doing the heptarchy, it was like, yeah, let me try to put in the heptarchy. And if obviously you're not going to make the call to the heptarchy each time, because that's, some of the watchtower calls that didn't come in till later. But I think, yeah, I think either for the watchtowers alone or maybe the entire thing, but it lines up, pretty well those last 3 weeks. It lines up more or less with the watchtowers off by a couple days, but I think, yeah, I think for the most part, I would actually need to look back at the diary entries because I was doing so much all at once. But yeah, I do recommend doing that because you have seven kings, and you have 7 days a week, and you have 7 weeks. So just use them. That's what it's for. It's a septenary system. So, but yeah, I do view the book as a talisman, and I would make the calls in reverse order. So starting with call 40, the spoken call 48, call 0 would being the very absolute first one. I would do that, and then make the call to text, and I would do that 3 times a day. Then the next day I'd do call 47, and so on and so forth. When I was enumerating it on the blog, for what it's worth, I said, okay, this is spoken call, blah blah blah, and most people call it this, or this is the way I'm enumerating it, but I always put in parentheses other people do it this way. But just to make it clear in case people want to like compare, like, what is this guy doing? But yeah, for the last day, I actually read off the leaf itself, which is kind of taboo because this is not, I think they were not supposed to do this when they said, well, do it in God's time. And I'm like, well, it's been 400 years. If it's not God's time now, well, I
Well,
guess I guess
that
I'll guess I'll be smitten. But
what is
I
the
got a
idea
strong,
of
yeah,
God's time?
I don't know.
I mean,
I
to
don't know.
me, when I think of God's time as a theologian, I think of that time at which all other time, like say sacred time, let's go Mircea Eliade. Sacred time and profane time are two different things, right? The
Mm,
profane time is when the sun is here and the moon are here, and it's time for
mm,
supper and you have to wake up because it's morning, right?
right.
Sacred time is where are you in your relationship to God? You're in the sweat
Mm,
lodge. How many hours
right.
have you been in there? It doesn't matter unless because you haven't sung this song yet with this drum beat. You haven't smoked the tobacco and knick, and you haven't even walked around the sweat lodge for your
I
sacred
love that.
time. So therefore,
Yeah.
this is where you're at. Doesn't matter where the sun and moon are. I mean,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
in the sweat lodge. That's the sacred time. So in God's time is defined by, and this goes back. This is not something I'm coming up with brilliantly. God's time is in some sense defined. Yeah, no, I'm standing on the shoulders of fucking giants, baby.
Aren't we
um
all, right?
yeah, right, amen. That's why we're talking about this shit, and it's so wonderful that you're sharing what you did with this, especially because your prime goal isn't to like promote a book that's coming out. You're just like, check it out,
Yeah.
this is a big deal for me, and it might be one for you. So
Hmm.
the God's time is defined by the relationship of the self to God. And what could be more God's time than your relationship to God at that final stage of that last leaf? We got a little technical issue
Yeah,
here,
no,
folks.
I'm just adjusting. I set up after COVID just a nice like easy chair, and sometimes I just need to adjust because I'm like sitting like cross-legged, and I'm just like,
Oh, I know, you got to
yeah,
stretch, gotta.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
um
But yeah, that's exactly right. So No, I like that. And some people may say, hey, it's there's the eternal now, right?
Yeah.
But the angel, part of the thing I think that the angels probably said, don't do this one, is I don't think that they did as much preparation. They did actually scold them for not getting this shit done on time.
Hmm.
Um, there's this astrologer who I'm friendly with, who's it's Astro Castalia on, if you look her up online, Kasta Lia. But what she has pointed out is that, or pointed out to me, is that there's this interesting phenomenon known as septiles in astrology, and that during that D. Kelly transmission, that they were supposed to get a lot of this, that these septile, you take a circle 360 degrees and you divide it by 7. So instead of like the major astrological aspects, a square, a trine, which would be like 90 and 120 degrees, a septile is like 51 or a multiple thereof. So like a biseptile or whatever the case may be. But what was interesting is that they kept on, when they got this book, they got the transmission of it in English letters, and they got like kind of confused as to whether or not an angel was going to do it for them because they didn't want to
Mm.
do the work. And can you blame them? It took me 7.5 months, but they said they were supposed to get it done in 40 days. Well, that shit ain't happening. I mean, it took me probably 40 24-hour days over the course of 7.5 months, because that's how much time it takes to
Jesus.
do it if you just absolutely dedicate yourself to it. But it's probably like 1,000 hours or maybe a little bit more, but roughly around there. But the thing is, they got school. I know. I swear, I like dedicated every waking moment that was not occupied with any other responsibility to getting this done. And I put off a lot of stuff to get it done. But Dee and Kelly, they were like, we'll just let it slide a year. And they were supposed to get it done by that August. And I think this transmission, I want to say it was like given to them like in May. And so they were supposed to get it done by that August. And if you look at it, even though they're supposed to get it done by then, the astrologically, these septile things don't actually get activated. They don't get in that range until like late, until the next year when they actually wound up doing it. But they scolded them and they said, no, you didn't do this, so you're only going to get like part of what you could get out of this.
Huh.
Because God's merciful, blah blah blah. But I think it was there's something to be said for, okay, well, better listen to them. But then
Yeah.
again, these poor guys, they didn't know what they were dealing with. They were walking into it's like when you walk out of kindergarten and then you go into a college classroom on whatever, you're like and somebody, the angel is the other student in the class who's trying to like explain shit to you, and you're just like, eventually they just get frustrated and just like, okay, just write this shit down, just write this down, and figure it
Yeah.
out. So,
They
but yeah,
the,
go
the
ahead.
spirits on an energetic level, Enochian spirits seem to me to have a very similar relationship to fairies. And that might be a weird thing for some people to hear, um, especially some Christians out there, maybe. But I don't know if it's because of they're somewhat more chthonic, or like closer to the earth in manifestation, or if it's because they're so focused on singular tasks. The difference to me energetically seems to be in that the Enochian angels and spirits generally seem helpful and disposed to helping, and maybe that's because of the way in which they were transmitted and the prayers we do. Maybe that's something else, but they have that sort of playfulness to them, it seems to me. I don't know if that's something
Yeah.
you've noticed.
Yeah, there was they do and they don't. It's like at times they're just deadly serious
Yeah.
about stuff.
Well, so are fairies, because fairies are what I meant. Well, what I left out was, but the difference is with fairies, every time I work with real serious fairies, they always show up. They often seem to show up pissed, like
mm,
breaking through, and they're like, "What the fuck, dude?" And
yeah.
I'm like,
Mm,
"What do you mean, what the fuck? Who told you?"
what did I
You
do?
know, I've been doing this for hours to get you to show up. I got some questions. And they're like, fine. Rah.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't. That's one area that I haven't dealt as much with, but yeah, I guess I can see that.
I'll send you an evocation.
Okay.
I got a fairy
Yeah,
evocation for you to
I've
try.
yeah, I've got. I was telling Ryan the other day. I'm like, this is like what I have right now, and I got like the PGM, and I got
Oh, nice.
Abulafia, and I've got, I got ancient Egyptian magic just to supplement the PGM stuff because I know that there's a split at some point. But yeah, I'll add it to the list. It's just like I'm trying to like focus, put all this stuff in order, and try to get it done in that order. To me, it's like I gotta get this thing out because I know there are so many practitioners who just will not. They don't have the time. They're constrained. I'm like, I know that there are people who are like if you are raising, let's say multiple children, maybe one kid you could get away with trying to do this, but multiple children, zero chance you're going to get this done. Zero chance if they're like under the age of 10, let's say,
Yeah.
that it's just too much time, and too much effort, and chances are one of the kids are going to spill their drink on it or something. But so I want to make it accessible so that people can print it out.
We don't have
And
scullery mates to take our kids to the country.
no, I can't imagine how D did that, man. Like what he had not, that dude had 9 children. 9 children. What is going on?
I mean, fathers weren't they weren't that involved in their kids' lives
Yeah,
necessarily, right?
yeah, that's woman's
It
work,
was
I
it was it
guess.
was very common that like often kids wouldn't have know their fathers hardly at all
Hmm.
until they were adults. I mean,
Yeah,
and it's sort of like let's see if they survive and become a real person. Of
yeah.
course,
But
that's in higher class families. In lower class families, they were treated as adults as soon as they could carry chop wood and carry water or whatever.
yep, yep. That's
Yeah.
that's all that. They're starting to get functional. So let's put them to work.
I'm
Yeah.
curious. So what would you say is the difference in for you magically as just a human spiritual being prior and after this doing
Yeah.
Liber Loga Gebofal?
Yeah. So
Because it is all this work, but I don't think people aren't doing it for no reason, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah,
People aren't
like
doing it just to
what's
put a feather in their cap.
yeah, just to be awesome, right? So I can say I did it. No, nothing like that.
Yeah, it's
It's
like it better have some results, otherwise, did you do
yeah.
it, right? And good
Yeah,
for
yeah,
you. It's like
exactly.
good for you, you did it. What's the results? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
slow clap, golf clap, yeah. Um yeah, so I'm trying to order this around here to make it make it digestible because it's a lot of work. And I'm still, keep in mind, this is just a little bit after a month after having done it, so I'm still kind of coming off of it, as it were. But a few things that happen. So first of all, the energy level on this is higher than just doing regular Enochian, which sounds crazy to say. But the thing is like after going through regular Enochian, which is to say going through the aethers and occasionally doing some watchtower workings, you get kind of leveled up in how much you can take, right? I mean, you kind of you're familiar with this, right? You start off knowing some level of energy and being able to handle that, and then all of a sudden you do this ritual, whoa, that was powerful. And then maybe you get to, let's say, the LBRP, and that's new to you. Oh, that's interesting and that's new, and you have to adjust to that. And then maybe the supreme versions of the pentagram, that's what is this, and so on and so forth. And when I got into Enochian, that was when, okay, this is even more than I'm used to before. And it's like you're building this muscle to be able to handle this much energy. So first of all, if you're just an energy junkie, then this definitely is for you, because it gets really way up there. Um, the next thing I would say, so that in and of itself is kind of cool.
did you find that
Uh,
energy increase affected you on a day-to-day basis?
it was enough to be able to do it, to go for 49 straight days, 3 times a day, plus typing up the blog, because I
The energy
wanted to do that
high,
every
the
day.
magic carried you through it.
It carried me through.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is, so that's kind of the first thing, and well, that's a good transition to the next thing, which is you start learning more stuff about the system, and okay, and you start seeing these connections. And sometimes it's like you're not sure, is this something I thought of, or is this something the angels guided me towards? And other times it's very explicit that the angels are telling you, this is how you need to start thinking about the system and why it's built out like this. So if you go through like my posts that are through this, it's bizarre because over those 49 days, I probably have like 50 or 55 posts. So only 49 of them are actually about Enochian, about the Gebofal process. But then in addition to that, I'm getting like, okay, so here's this thing about like the numbers that are involved with this. And so what am I talking about here? Well, did you notice, how about these Pythagorean triples, man? Did you ever notice that if you, and what if you used, instead of just 2D, what if you made that a 3D distance equation, which is, you have three terms that you have to take the square root, the three squared terms that you need to take the square root of, instead of just two, like you get with the triangle, a right triangle. And it's like, what? so the thing is that all of this is kind of to say that you start getting downloads about the system itself. At least I did, and I was very fortunate. The other interesting thing is that you go through, and I kind of had this idea before, but so another, just in that same vein about like learning about the system, it's weird that there seems to be this split in that 49ness, that, so I mentioned the 49 by 49 grid that you use to make each of the tables of Liber Loga, plus each, there are 49 individual leaves. So then it's like, okay, well, there's certain splits at like 19 and 30, just like with the watchtower calls versus the aethers. There are 30 aethers, so there are 30 calls to the aethers, and then 19 calls to the watchtowers. Well, why is that, man? And you start getting into that, and like, well, I don't know. And you start realizing like, okay, 30,
Today's the 19th.
yeah, today's the 19th, right? So exactly, and I didn't even plan it like this, but
Oh,
so
and here's another synchronicity. This is the deadline by which I have to send back Aaron Leach's Essential Enochian Grimoire to Amazon. So there's another Enochian 19 connection. Amazon said today's the day I have to drop it off because the pages were all torn, like literally torn in the package.
oh yeah,
So they sent
definitely
me
get
another
that.
one right away. So I've got two sitting here, but I don't want to be dinged 45, 50 Canadian for the torn one.
Absolutely.
You don't need two
Yeah.
copies of that book anyway.
No, no. But yeah, so why is there that
The
19ness? And
19th.
yeah, it didn't make sense to me, like what's going on with this. So I kept on, so I'm like, okay, 30 aethers, that kind of is like 30 degrees of the zodiac. Well, that's interesting. So I started going down this rabbit hole about the zodiacal kings, that are in that. And if you look in his book, he goes into more detail than other authors on this, because he's just massively knowledgeable. But you go through, and it turns out that each of the zodiacal kings is paired up with each of the 91 governors, except the zodiacal kings, there's only 12 of them, so they appear multiple times. And it's like imbalanced. Like there's 5 of them. For the king for Aries appears 5 times, but the king for Pisces appears 15. And what is that? And you start realizing, like, you go down these rabbit holes, and you start, there's some discoveries that I made as a result of like partly being steeped in the system. Sometimes it's an angel helping me, maybe it's an angel guiding me without me knowing. But like some of those large numbers, I mentioned this on Ryan's podcast, but like some of those large numbers that you get in the calls, like 69,636, like, I've heard the like David Jones on the Facebook group, he mentions that, hey, that's 666 with 93 inside, that makes sense, right? I'm like, yeah, it does to a degree. But then I said, well, but check this out. If you take the all of the Servian angels paired up with these governors, these massive numbers of, and then you start doing that for these aethers, then all of a sudden it turns out that all of these to exactly add up to that 69,636. And then I'm like, I wonder if these other cults have that. And it turns out half of them add up to that number exactly with a certain, if you pair them up completely, right? This is like mind blowing. Like, what the heck? There's no way. There is no way
Kelly
that
was, it must have been
Kelly,
a genius forger.
oh yeah, he's a genius forger. He's just making this up, and it's just like there's no way. And oh, and by the way, if you add up the numbers of the actual aethers that go along with that, all these come up to 49 as well. Yeah, right, Jack. Yeah, right.
And it's funny that the 40 number 49 always makes me, of course, think of the idea of the 50 gates of Binah.
Exactly.
Because Kabbalah is my background, very strongly, like, Hasidic rabbi in Vienna in 97, then
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew and Aramaic specialty in seminary. So I really do love that structure. And I am always looking for connections between it and the Enochian system, especially because
Yeah.
D was so weak on Kabbalah.
Yeah.
I mean, brilliant guy. I mean, his hieroglyphic monad. I had an adept at Temple Tahuti who used to use the hieroglyphic monad to give us additional lectures and then base ritual work off theories on it. So, like, we were deep into a bunch of crazy shit, and there's a lot of connections you can find. I'm fascinated by buried Kabbalistic connections in the Enochian thing, just for my own curiosity, and the idea of the 49, and then this constant overruling idea of the secret one, the secret silence, right?
Yeah.
It makes me think, well, that's maybe a secret to the gates of Binah as well. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I
this
don't
this
know.
was
I know that's far
what
out.
no, no, well, and I kind of in Ryan's podcast I was talking about this, but like the 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 thing that I was working off of was actually it appears to be a draft that Aaron has on his Kef 777 tripod site that either he hasn't taken down or that he's willing to leave out there as a draft so that people can work off of it. And I did not work with him. I am more than happy to work with him if he ever wants to work with me on absolutely anything, because he's really knowledgeable on this. But
We should do an
he
Enochian roundtable.
no kidding, no
Yeah,
kidding,
I've
yeah.
got a
But
Masonic one coming up. I want to do an Enochian one. Get
I
like
would
you
definitely
and
be the
Leach
most
and
junior.
Stenwick.
I would be the most junior member because get Louv in there if he's able and willing. But yeah, I mean it's like but at any rate, it's funny that you mentioned that 49 too, because I just thought of another thing. So that monad, you know, how tall that is. Like he gives the exact specific dimensions of how big it needs to be. So like there's that bottom cross that needs to be like each half of here needs to be two of any, two, let's say 2 inches or 2 feet or whatever, however big you want to make it. But this needs to be each side of that, the arms of the cross need to be two. And then the head, the part above the cross needs to be just one, and then below the cross needs to be three. But if you add up, so that's a dimensionality of four, that four by, you're splitting it differently, but if you were to take the whole thing, you'd say this is 4 tall by 4 wide. But if you take the thing as a whole, it's 9 high. So there you get 49 as well. And now either D is like a genius and able to get this scryer to start saying the stuff that he wants to. It's like there's no way. There's no way. It's like you haven't studied enough if you think that this is all just a con. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's fascinating, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and D talks about him being like mystically pregnant with this thing. So
If that makes me think of the process of all initiation, right? This feeling of pregnancy, as the energies build up in your subtle bodies and then get released into a new sort of awakening, and then the new awakening imprints new symbols in your sphere of sensation, and
yeah.
then you build those up. But the building of them up, which is like why in my group, in the Hermetic Mystery School.com,
Mm-hmm.
we're in our weekly classes, like, that's why I don't feel any qualms having them start by drawing a sigil, contemplating it, not wearing a ring, then start doing the prayers, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Perfect.
Because yeah, that building up of these forces and forms is very important, and
Mm-hmm.
leads to this kind of spiritual breakthrough that we call initiation, or transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, let me get back to your question about why we do this too. So like, okay, energy junkie, whatever, and then oh, you get to figure out about this system. Well, duh, because that's the thing you're studying, whatever. Okay, but the real thing is like when I was doing this, it was you start really quickly getting into questions about symbols that are trying to get at the core of questions that humanity is facing. So in my particular case, I've always had like a very been interested, it kind of oriented more or less towards like Buddhism. I've recently gotten more into some Taoism and some, I'm starting to become like Thich Nhat Hanh, who's willing to just eat from the buffet of religion. He was fine taking a catechism and all of that, or taking a communion, I should say. Even though he's a Buddhist. But
No, he's
what
great.
he's great, yeah. But what I found is like what's what got condensed down. I probably didn't explain it too well, so I'll give it another shot here. Is like it's this condensation and boiling down of the issues as I interpret them, because I'm just one person doing this process of suffering and the issues of what it means to be a human being alive in this world. So I was getting like symbols. One of the big ones I got was like, I talk about this idea of in that via Robert and John Wilson. I haven't actually read Ubik, but it's this Philip K. Dick book called that they called Ubik, where people are being controlled by this black iron prison, which is kind of, if you think about, well, what's it like to be in a prison? Well, you're in a cell, and a cell is basically just this nice little cube, or maybe not so nice little cube that you're stuck in, right? So, but to me, it was good sort of thinking about it like that, because it's sort of like this archonic idea where, oh, we're all being controlled and we don't have any control over our lives. We're just stuck in this thing and there's nothing we can do. And that's a great trip to fatalism right there, and or hedonism or some combination thereof. Not that there's anything wrong with feeling good, but that in and of itself isn't sufficient, I think, to feeling living a life with no regrets. But at any rate, so that's one way you can be. But what I was thinking about, I sort of combined with, or what got combined for me as I was doing this, I shouldn't take credit for this per se, but as I went along, the symbols started changing, and I started realizing, let's combine this idea of suffering and not and polarity, and this idea, Crowley's idea of like 0 equals 2, -1 + 1, the thing and its opposite, and then trying to be at the center. Because to me, I'm very like, I'm very heart focused. I really try to like, that's the thing I want to focus on. That's what I want to be like in and be holographic throughout the world, is to be true to that. So what I say, well, okay, so this idea came to me, it arose of a black sphere, which is to say that, okay, there's this idea of Buddhism where you're trying to grasp for something, but if you grasp for it and you get it and let's say you consume it, then you're sick to your stomach because you've eaten too much of the thing that you like, or, then all of a sudden, or maybe you shifted polarity, and instead of wanting food, all of a sudden now I want sex, or all of a sudden I want power, or all of a sudden I want whatever the case may be, status, or my kids to shut the F up, who knows, right? Just all of these little things that the mind continually grasps for, because we human beings are great problem finders, right? And a lot of times our solutions create more problems, because that's just how life works. So it was, what I came to realize is like, okay, well, if you're at that center, in that place of equanimity, that's great. And then like another symbol came in, and it was like, well, that's where the heart can be, right? That's where that white sphere can be, a white sphere of compassion, because now that you're centered, you can see this total suffering that happens when you're sort of on the outside and life is happening to you and you're very attached to it. So that was cool. And then it occurred to me, well, what if we invert this idea of a black iron cube, or a black cube, which is representative of a loss of control and all that, or being controlled by something? What if we have a form of control that is actually positive, right? So the idea of like a white cube occurred to me, which is to say, like any system of rules that allows you to continue to be a good person. So, brush your teeth and don't kick the dog, and make sure to say thank you after this and that, things you should do, things you shouldn't do. And you could even add in whatever you want, like a true will idea, like, okay, there's this hyper morality thing that's only along 2 dimensions, but then there's also what you feel drawn to do in your life. But at any rate, that's kind of like the idea of a white cube. But and so at any rate, so all of this is going along, so you see how meaningful this is, right? This isn't something that you would just like kind of come up with on your own. easily, so there's all of that. But all of this led to a culmination, and I got this idea in the back of my mind is like, okay, it seems like this whole thing is going to be like an inverse of a spiral, like you're coming on the outside and you're trying to get towards the center of something via this ritual. And you could say like 30 degrees of a zodiac, that's a circle. And there was a thing on my post on my blog about squaring the circle and all of that. Again, it's tough because you have all these downloads happening at once and they're multivalent. But the thing that I got out of this was like the final day was, it was a couple of things. It was a few things that happened in the morning. What happened was God came at me like this, or this was the vision, of course. He came at me like this with his fingers interlaced like this, and right by making this motion, this curling motion back and forth. I'm just rotating my wrist for people who are listening to the audio thing, and you can imagine interlaced fingers and making kind of a circle like that, or a spherical thing. But what that sphere did is it bisected my heart in two, and so there was some energetic heart work, and it's like, I'm feeling more aligned with the universe and all of that. But then at the end, so that's part of the process of being able to like understand both the cosmic level and also like the here and now, and you have to sort of bridge those two and be able to walk with both of those things happening.
Yeah, that's
So
very
just
true.
yeah. So just getting to like the evening. By the way, this is all like, me reading off the leaf and trying to like, for several minutes of the, 40 minutes, for each side. So it turned out to be an hour and a half as just the prelim. But getting to the end, what I felt like I was like, the typical abduction thing, you're taken up in a beam of light, but I wasn't really, I knew I wasn't. It was just, on the astral though I was, or
Yeah.
however you want to say that, whatever level of the tree of life you want to put that at. But I got the real sense that, okay, this is taking me to the realm of Adam Kadmon, and here is what God is experiencing. And the sense that I got was that,
The
God is,
bath.
what's that?
It's what David Heimsmith calls the bath.
Oh yeah. It's kind of like that. But so I have this like cosmic vision of God, and I get the sense of like God's own heart, right? And a good friend of mine, Cody P, his website is unslop.com. I'll just say that now. But he talks about like this broken heart of God, and I say that's really interesting, or the aching heart of God. And I got the real sense it was like, and the explanation for that, or the implicit as an explanation for that, was that God's, I got the sense, okay, God is omnipotent, but it's like if he did certain shit, he would not respect himself, right? Like you can do almost anything, man. Like if I wanted to right now, I could go, streak down the street. I could, I have so much power right now to do whatever the F I want. But none of that would be something that, most of that would not be something that I would respect myself for doing, because I'm not doing it. And the reason I know that is because I'm not doing it. I am making this active choice not to do it. And the same way, God is not doing that. Because, if we ask for God to do this and that and the other thing, he's got to put up with a lot of stuff. And it's very sad and heartbreaking that stuff isn't coming together, or that it takes a long time for humanity to develop itself to the point where, two people from another country can just talk on Zoom, and without wanting to, suddenly, wave a flag and want to fight each other, whatever the case may be. All that idea is that, if he were to intervene, it would be like, you got to let your child fail sometimes, and sometimes that means they're going to skin their knee. And sometimes it's going to be really, really tragic, but that doesn't mean it's anybody's fault. And that doesn't mean that, that the hurt is not real. It's just that it hurts, but it would be like undoing everything that made this moment possible for him to interfere. That was the sense I got. It was like that's the limitation, the self-imposed limitation that God has put on himself by creating reality itself, and being, because again, in a lot of ways, like God is bound by the fact that he is real, and reality is bound by the fact that it's being constantly created by God, if you take one interpretation of that. But at any rate, So yeah, a nice divine union and a nice sense of what some of the stuff that God has to deal with and why. Yeah, you kind of get over a lot of your normal life problems. And for me, I'm going to self-disclose here. I've tried to be open about this whenever, I'm interacting with the public. Yeah, I have bipolar disorder. I know there are going to be times when that condition gets the better of me, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like this is the sort of thing that going through the process, you have perspective on times when you're going to F up, and the amount of equanimity, the amount of being able to stay in the heart, especially as time goes on. It's kind of weird, but it's like getting easier as time goes on, maybe because the energy of the ritual is starting to come away and it's just the effects thereafter. So the kind of the glamour goes away, but the treasure is still there.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm feeling. So that's a very long-winded answer to that question, but hopefully helpful.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. Like really.
Thanks, man.
It's yeah. Did this have any impact on your wife and kid? I'm curious.
So I don't have any kids,
Oh, you don't? Okay.
but I am married, and there was one time when it was like, of course, it was like with 1 week left, right? So you got to keep going, right? But it was not it was not the most tragic thing, but it was still not good. And it was one of those things, like, as to use a term, as a householder, magician, instead of somebody who does this full time like a monk, you have to like juggle a lot of different things. And what I noticed was that my wife was having some sleeping problems. I'm like, okay, that happens. That's not uncommon for her. But I noticed, like, when she was up, she was cleaning, and I think at first it just started off, okay, just this normal, okay, she has nothing else to do, so let me just clean, why not? And I was glad that she was doing that, because less for me to do. No, I'm just kidding. I definitely try to maintain that. But also, I think it's complicated because she's on disability, so it's difficult for her to do a lot of physical activity for a while. And it's this whole thing. If you ever know somebody who's gone through this, there's this push pull about agency versus acceptance. Because if you just accept
Who's gone
that you're
through?
who's gone through being disabled, let's say,
Oh,
or like
for
one of those walking disabled. Oh, how you're walking around? How are you disabled? But
dude, for
really, you're
4 years
disabled,
I couldn't walk without a cane, and I could
right?
only walk for minutes at a time. And I spent
Okay,
almost every day I had to crawl to the bathroom if I could get to the
exactly.
bathroom at all for 4 years.
Yeah.
That's
Then you know
that's a
exact.
level of pain most people don't get. They
Then
will
you know
never get it.
exactly what I'm talking about. You know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm
I was
talking about.
lucky I got fixed. They were like, next step is a wheelchair, but no, I
Yeah,
got fixed. And that took so much will
I'm really glad for
throughout
you.
that period of time,
Right.
because people stop coming by after the first 6 months or the first
Oh
year
yeah.
or the first 2 years. Then you have years with no one and nothing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just your
No,
pain.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Not
So
the way
God
you
bless
do.
her. And
Yeah. So
yeah,
so she's
everyone who's
yeah,
been
yeah,
through
yeah,
it.
yeah. So
It's a
so
real
so
thing.
I when she's doing that sort of thing, it's like, well, do I tell her, hey, you need to stop? Well, no, because it's like agency, right? It'd be like, if you're in that state and you're able, despite all the pain, to do that, then I'm not going to stop you, because hey,
Yeah.
you're doing something for yourself, for us. That's great, so and I'm not going to like try to like be a parent about that. But what happened was, so this happens for a few days, but what happens is this keeps going, and I try to talk to her like, hey, you should really, trying to get her back on sleep hygiene and stuff like this. um and it turns out that I realized after like the eighth or ninth day, I'm like, oh shit, she is sleepwalking. Because the
Wow.
thing is, like, she was cleaning, but then she came into this
Wow.
space, which is like the sacred space. You do not touch the space in which I do all my magic, because this could be dangerous to you. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I fucking miss that? Well, I knew how I missed this because I was busy. But so, busy not paying attention
She
and being kind
sleepwalked
of
into your Chaz.
yeah, well, she eventually did that, but I should have realized
Oh
it's like,
no.
okay, because when I was talking with her, she would just give me very short answers and then get back to cleaning. And that's not usually how we interact. Like, she usually has a lot to say, which is fine. I mean, clearly I do as well. So I felt terrible. I quit I locked down as much socializing as I was doing online. Like I said, okay, I'm going to leave this Discord channel. I'm going to do this. I still have obligations here, but I'm going to like lock absolutely everything down so that I can really focus on this. And that probably helped me energetically, because it's like crystallizing in a real, very real sense all of these sort of up in the air mental ideas about suffering. No, this is what it's about. It's about this sort of thing. I still finished the ritual, but I managed in that day to get her to like take a nap, and then she wakes up with a nightmare, and I say, no, that's okay. I explained to her that that's not happening, get her to go back to sleep and reset her sleep cycle. But man, did I feel guilty about that. I felt horrible, but eventually she's like, okay, your guilt is getting boring now. So I said, okay. But yeah, that was like the challenge. And of course it happened 6 weeks in. So it's like, well, you're going to quit six weeks in. That's kind of like the 50-50 point. Like, okay, am I a terrible husband, or am I going to actually like go through it? Or is this just something that I could have missed anyway? And maybe I should just keep going and I just decided to keep going. So
No.
yeah,
Rock
it
and
was
roll.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't, I mean, people have had worse. I mean, who can forget Cosmic Trigger, Robert Anton Wilson and his daughter, it's like, geez, losing her. So I've been lucky that I have not experienced massive tragedy in my life. I'm very lucky
Yeah.
in
Oh,
spite of it
good.
all. Yeah,
You
exactly.
mentioned incorporating vibration in your, I noticed in your posts as well. So that's cool that you're bringing in a little GD
Absolutely.
approach
Absolutely. I love
there.
that.
Yeah, sometimes it fits, sometimes I find it doesn't. Um, but that's another cool little fusion that you did. And again, like the pieces you showed, how you put together the tablets, even your tablet reunion, and you've, I think, I actually don't think what Aaron Leach calls neo-Enochian is neo-Enochian. I think what you're describing should wear that title like proudly, is like,
Well,
because I would expect neo-Enochian to be some sort of vast improvement or
mm,
addition to, especially creatively, to Enochian magic in general, or angelic magic, as
as
opposed
opposed to like
to,
a fusion or
yeah, as
something,
opposed to
or
a term that's applied to Enochian magic that isn't purist,
mm,
and by whatever terms that means, because I don't, even the purist isn't really pure. There's there's things we don't talk about. Like, if you're a purist, then I think you'd keep your Y14, wouldn't you, instead of Y15?
mm.
Am I right?
Yeah, no,
Right?
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
we
And
all we all discovered that, and we're like, yeah, we're just gonna do that. We're just gonna
yeah,
change
we're going to do
change the
Y15 because
sigillum Mehmet,
yeah, well, because D never
because
did, well, yeah.
this is so obvious. But that
Yeah.
right there, that's, what's purism after that? I mean,
Yeah, well,
again,
that's the thing. It's like you clearly you got to be thinking it through. I appreciate those kind words. I mean, I'm just sort of, I figure there are a lot of magicians out there who are doing stuff like this, who are just trying to put it together in some way that makes sense to them. And so, I mean, I appreciate that. I'm just like I say, I'm anything that I happen to come up with is just standing on the shoulder of a bunch of other people who've gone before. But yeah, it's
well, now
I
people are
mean,
going to stand on your shoulders. I mean, I plan on using your Excel sheet to
yeah.
as a basis for writing my own book, right? That's what it can be used for, correct?
Yeah, it could be used for that. I mean, keep in
Yeah.
mind, like other people have done this. Like if you go to condor.de, you can get a version of that.
Oh,
Now,
really?
what I'm finding, I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything incredibly controversial to say, ooh, I found, a couple of transcription errors. Duh. It's like 2,400 letters per side of per page. I mean, that's nuts. But so of course people are gonna make a small error here or there. And so I'm just redoing it in the way that just having gone through it by hand and done it that way the first time. I just kind of want to be absolutely sure. Maybe I'm just like overly, maybe it's my North Node in Virgo or my Saturn in Virgo, I just like, oh, I really want to be in control of that. I also have, sun and moon trying that in Taurus. So I'm just like, I have a little bit of control issues, with all that earth in my chart. But yeah, I just wanted to be sure. But yeah, if you want to do it by hand, that's fine. If you just want to print it out, I'm doing it that way as well. I'm going to have like a little guide, but I'm finishing leaf 8B today. So it's going a little bit faster than the first time, but at this rate, it'll only take 6 months, but I'll probably have some additional time. I just haven't had any vacation since then.
Yeah, well, I mean, COVID's not a bad time to do this, and you finished just in
Yeah.
time for California to open up. You live in California, right?
No, I'm in San Antonio,
I don't know
in
where that
Texas.
is. Is that near Saskatchewan?
No,
That's
no problem.
Texas. You're in Texas,
That's
eh?
Texas. Yeah, yeah. I
Wow.
gotta get out of here.
San
I gotta get out
Antonio.
of
Is
here.
that near
Yeah.
Corpus Christi?
So Corpus Christi is about 3 hours south. We're kind of like we're technically southern Texas, but if you go up to Austin, that's kind of like dead center. So we're
Well,
about an hour an hour and a half south of Austin, or southwest of Austin, and then I think that's right. Who knows?
well,
My geography's off.
when I make it to Austin, which I will be, you got to come visit. We'll do some
Absolutely.
Enochian.
Yep.
Yeah.
As soon as this global nightmare is over and we're all vaccinated and pretending that we were completely prepared the whole time.
Yeah. Plus, the aliens are going to give us teleportation technology, so we don't
That's
have to
right.
worry about customs and immigration anymore. Just beep, bop,
Beep. That's right. Or we'll just chip in, and we will, everything will be, travel will be optimized because we will have the chips calculate route for us.
Yeah. Did you ever do much with using Enochian for thaumaturgical kinds of results?
Yeah.
I know
So,
people would be upset if I didn't ask you, what did he
oh
do
yeah.
with it? Did he do anything?
Did
Like,
you get? Yeah, you
what
got all
did
these
he
things. Yeah.
do?
Sounds like you just had an acid trip. This doesn't, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
Hey,
no.
that's how Jason
Yeah.
Louvre did the 38ers, he said, was on acid
He
with
has
group
said that
sex.
he did it on DMT, is what he
But
said.
you can't do it on DMT, then you're not doing
And
DMT right. If
he
you can
he has
speak, you're
spec
not on DMT.
he has specifically said, it was either acid or DMT, one of those two.
Acid.
But
It was acid.
he has said how in detail he's completely willing to tell the embarrassing story. Which, by the way, you have to respect anybody who's willing to do that. I mean, I just told
Oh
him
yeah.
about what was going on, but
I actually like
yeah,
Jason Louvre a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's great. He's
Yeah.
great. So yeah, so yes, I've done it before. Now the thing is that some of so I'm on his Discord server. So I just put out this all call. Hey, I'm just gonna try to pressure test this stuff. So what do y'all have? What do
Yeah,
you
let him
want?
know I'm a chill dude and he should talk to me.
Okay, yeah.
Some people
Next
probably
time.
think I'm a wanker. I don't know why, but who knows.
No, well, I don't know. I mean, he'll probably appreciate the Vancouver connection and the fact that you
Dude, he
seem to
worked
have
at my
crossed
buddy's
paths.
bookstore and worked with my friend
Yeah,
Eduardo, who was on my podcast, in the Chaos Magic thing. We had a lot of connections, but mainly I actually I link to his teaching school, and to
good.
I've recommended people to him. I think his
Yeah,
approach is right for some people. I think just like McCarthy's Querea approach is
yeah,
right for some people.
yeah.
Fortunately, we have a increasingly large amount variety of qualified teachers in different specialties and approaches.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
God, because that we did
Yeah.
not
I mean,
have that in the 90s, man.
oh my God,
We
the
had like
90s.
Scott
You know,
Cunningham and Jeffrey James.
yeah. I mean, you're just looking for something, and you're just like, well, don't these people have it figured out? And it's like, no, because you're still dealing with a satanic panic, kid. Get out of here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It was terrible. Yeah. I mean, it's slowly, and even now, like I'm slowly, this is, part of the slow coming out of the broom closet. I don't feel too bad saying that in comparison to the, coming out of the closet, the gay closet or the LGBTQ closet, because people have, like me growing up, my mom discovered a book about some of my Robert Anton Wilson books. Sorry, Mom. And she burned them. And this is Robin Anton Wilson. This is not like
He'd
Aleister
probably
Crowley.
appreciate that. He'd probably be like,
Oh my
Is a
God.
true chaos
He's
magician.
like, oh my God. Yeah, exactly. Because look what happened now. This
I would-
you have it, you do one thing and it has the exact opposite effect. That's karma. You should have thought that through when you did that. But yeah, it's a true story. I don't know if
oh,
she would admit it now, but yeah, she made me stand there. She was trying to get me to burn it. I'm like, I'm not fucking burning my own books. You do it if that's such a problem for you. Anyway, this is a deep cut. Probably nobody who
No,
knows
it's
me is going to be too.
fascinating.
But at any rate, I'm trying to
I
be
love
more and
it.
more open about that to sort of like nudge the culture in that direction. But yeah, it's so great nowadays. If you want to learn stuff, you can do it, and you hopefully will do your research. I researched Jason a lot because I was getting the idea I should get back into Enochian after finishing the HGA work. So and he really seemed to know his stuff, so that was cool. And I've gone through his course material, and that's great. And now I'm kind of like just doing other stuff. I'm like, clearly I started the blog, and I'm like, okay, here's my approach to a lot of the stuff that I found. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see how well that gets accepted, because I do have the day job, the professional job, and
Mm. Well, I mean, I think these days people won't notice that much.
probably not.
Like that's one of the reasons my buddy Edward was sort of able to get me to come onto the scene, because I was one of these GD people that, like most GD people and adepts, actually you never ever will hear of them, right? And that's
Yeah.
it.
You're
They
the
get
first person who I know who's like, I mean, I'm sure like you hear the list of somebody like Aaron on like Glitch Bottle, and he's this person and this person, this person. You hear that as part of the list, but you've spoken so much about it. It's very interesting hearing your experiences with that, on your podcast. So
with
it's great.
which person and which person?
Probably like somebody like Aaron, when he's being introduced on, whatever podcast he's been on, they probably list that as part of his biography. I'm sure I've heard him being
Yeah.
referenced as Golden Dawn.
Oh yeah, he's a senior adept, and
Yeah.
he's probably
Yeah.
he's like Cicero's heir apparent, more or less. But there's a lot of lot of GD temples that have been around, and like people have no idea. It's much more to vast, but still dispersed, right? The thing that
Mhm.
what I was saying is, the reason I felt a little bit more comfortable to come on the scene is the internet had gotten so convoluted by 2016, 2017. Really, people stopped paying attention to things, right? It stopped becoming, it's sort of, the internet sort of transitioned from everyone fascinated by every cool thing that they could find to having way too much shit to even begin to pay attention to, and realizing, oh, my attention
Yeah.
has value. Why I'm
Yeah.
not going to give 2 seconds to something that I'm not interested in. So then
Yeah.
when I start talking about, start a podcast talking about Waldorf schools, very few people,
Yeah.
right? Or I'm like, sitting there with a glass of whiskey talking Jason Newcomb and making jokes, like that's going to disinterest people, and that protects you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
People, like, who cares?
It's not esoteric, but it's esoteric because of the level of interest, and so only people who would be interested in that sort of thing are going to keep listening.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
My
it's been
sister, when we were kids, and she just joined the Golden Dawn at like 16, and I was, I guess, 20, and a new adept at Temple Tahuti. I had always had a problem hiding my books and my grade material from my friends. And then I saw her grade material out one day on her shelf, and her friends had just left. I'm like, why the hell is your grade material out on your shelf? She's like, oh,
yeah.
because when I try to hide it, they get really interested. I just leave it out, and they ask, what's this? I say it's some spiritual thing I'm doing, and they don't even open the cover. I was like, genius, like brilliant. This is true. This is a magician, my little
That's
sister, like
the
just
yeah.
cracking the code there.
That
I
that
had it in my
reminds me of
underwear drawer.
Yeah, that reminds me of Poe writing one of the first detective short stories ever, The Case of the Purloined Letter. And they're like, oh,
Great book,
where
yeah.
is it? Where could it be hidden? And it was just in this out bin, basically, this thing that was going to go in the trash. That's where he hid it, in just plain sight like that. So yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
So yeah, well, I think you'll probably be fine publicly, career wise and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's true though that if like I would like probably never be able to work for the church again, or maybe ever even teach high school or
Yeah.
college, if
Yeah.
I was plastering my name all over the internet next to
Yeah.
things like Enochian magic and Kabbalah and stuff like that. I could get away with maybe
Yeah.
some of it if it was more academic, which I have, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're going to encounter some people out there who are just
Yeah.
like, this guy's got to be canceled.
Yeah. In the Southeast US, there's no way. No way that,
Yeah.
like
Okay. Yeah.
maybe if I moved up to like the Pacific
The
Northwest,
hippie
then
Coover.
yeah, or to Vancouver or wherever,
Yeah.
I might have a chance, but it's not likely, that I mean, I could, but then the question is, well, what would I do? I could probably be like a gifted director, because I have a degree in gifted education, but
Yeah.
other than that,
I
it's like,
actually do want to talk to you just about that one day.
yeah,
Once
okay,
I've paid, because I noticed you've talked on some other podcasts about it, and I'm
yeah, yeah,
very,
yeah,
very curious about this. Like my main interest is really in education and pedagogical theory, and if I do ever go back and refinish my PhD, I'll probably switch to an education one, since my other guys passed away and that field's
uh,
esotericism's a disaster. I was with Nicholas Goodrick Clark, and I mean his department. Yeah, it's hard to study esotericism academically and then get a job.
yeah,
Whereas
it is.
if it's in education, but I'd be fascinated, for example, to study online education, which I could easily get money for studying Zoom education, advanced learning in my doctorate. No problem, baby. But I could, of
Hmm.
course, choose to focus. That would teach me a lot about how to be a better educator and how to maybe promote some insights in the esoteric world and spiritual communities for us improving that education model there. Because just in grad school alone, I learned a lot about adult education, and it is radically different from how kids are taught, which is, in my
Absolutely.
opinion, why undergraduate systems are failing, because they're using the outmoded industrial model of the straight up lecture format in an overcrowded classroom where no Q&A can be effective and there's no adult group dynamics, which is just so essential. So, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Well, it's almost like, it's almost as if they don't want too many people educated.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, at least they
It's,
legalized pot.
well, yeah, in some places, not here in
Oh, right.
Texas.
Jesus Christ. What
It's
what
all
the
right.
hell, guys? Like, come on, Texas. You guys get so many things
I was watching
right.
this newscast where they were bringing up decriminalizing or just medical marijuana, and come, I mean, there are studies backing this up, that it is doing stuff that other stuff can't do. And there were two comments, and both of them were negative, and the one of them said, "This is so dumb. Why are you even bringing this up? Blah 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 blah." It's like, is that the level of discourse you want to put on your television station? But I thought about it, I'm like, these were the two comments that they got. They got two comments, and none of the Texas liberals or the San Antonio liberals, because there are some, there's these blue, places where people are trying to be progressive about stuff like that. None of them thought, gee, I should write into the radio, into the TV station, and put a positive comment about this. Or the TV manager said, nah, nobody's going to buy that. We need to stick to this, more conservative line. I'm not speaking about any particular party, but more the conservative thinking about keeping things the same. But it's just, ugh.
Boy, I tell you what.
I do. What are you going to tell me? I tell you what. What are you going to tell me? I
Full
tell you what.
stop. Full stop. There was like 20 Texan initiates when I first went to my first Golden Dawn event in LA in 97.
Mm,
And so I learned a lot from them. I was billeted in a house with them and hanging with all these Texans. And I was a 16-year-old kid who'd just come back from 6 months in Vienna on a student exchange. So it was a culture shock, to say the least, to be
yeah.
alone on my own dime in the States in an occult order, no less, right? Picked up
Yeah.
from the airport by people I've never met and
And
spending the
those are
whole.
different. A whole different breed of Texans too, but they're still going to have some
There were
Texans.
some
See, I
from
grew up.
Houston, Austin, Dallas, and they were amazing. I'm still friends with
Hmm.
some of them, like today.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like they're just, yeah. That was a shock, because it wasn't what
Yeah.
I was taught about Texans up here
Yeah.
in Canada.
Of course.
In my
Of course.
igloo, the ice screen on my igloo told me
Right.
that all Texans.
Yeah, and it's never the case. There's variety among all kinds of people. I grew up in Minnesota, so that's why you don't hear any thick Texan accent, and worse than that, I don't have the Minnesota accent, because I always wanted to sound like Paul Majors on KARE TV, and he had a very good, standard American dialect, and I want to sound just like him. And ever since then, whenever I've talked with somebody who's an English as a second language person or English language learner, they always say, "Oh, I can really understand you really well." I'm like, "Yeah, because I sound like this standard form of American English that you've probably been taught." So anyway,
Yeah,
that's a whole other story.
you could pass up here in Canada.
Yeah, just a few little things. I have to be careful. I was listening to you were talking about how it's ideological,
Oh yeah,
but that's actually there's variations across the U.S.
yeah,
in how that's said too. So it's like,
of
you know,
course. And there is up here as well, of course. I'm sure
yeah,
some
of
people,
course.
but it was wearing on me because that word is being said so much these days. And finally, I just sort of realized, I was like, holy shit, there is a common, there is a majority difference in the States versus
Mm,
Canada to that word. And I had never noticed it.
yeah,
And again,
yeah,
as someone who loves words and language, like,
yeah, yeah.
when I study a language, usually the thing I focus on is dialectual differences, because I just find differences interesting. Like,
Hmm.
a lot of my facility with the Irish language comes from understanding dialectual differences that are, to me, just fascinating. Like that, even the
Hmm.
different way they say hello in different places, but then how each of those words are pronounced shows you the phonology of it. And it's just, and then cadence and gloss, as they call it. It's just fucking, that to me, that's so, that is so
Yeah,
exciting. Like, that's just my favorite thing to say. That's why, I should have probably stayed in the university world, but fuck it.
yeah. You got to do what you got to do.
I had to run away and join a Celtic band,
Awesome.
as
Yeah,
one does.
I had to. What did I do? I had to just get a job. I think my first experience with grad school was good. My second one was less so, but it's been okay. I feel like I made the right decisions
Yeah, it can
ultimately.
be really hit or miss, eh?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
said it. It's
yeah.
it's like I tell people, like, if you're going to go to grad school, you got to be prepared. You need, like, there's like 7 or 8 things, just to pull a number out there, that you need to, like, kind of work for you, and about 2 or 3 of those can slide, but not any more than that. Because if those things are starting to go, then the other things won't hold together enough for you to keep going. So I ultimately had to leave. It wasn't working out.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much more.
Yeah.
Over a drink in a pub maybe, but of course I don't drink alcohol, but I will be happy to tell you about it in
I'll
a less
just
public setting.
I'll just bring an Enochian sigil and press it on your face.
That's right. It'll just be telepathic.
Or I'll slip one in your back pocket.
That's one of
Eh,
those. Oh,
sure.
naughty, naughty.
Practice my sleight of hand. Um, did you
All
ever
right.
put any
Yeah, go ahead.
colors on the Karmara Hagenol sigils?
No, I just etched those in there. Like, the watchtowers, I used colors with, and of course the table. But no, I just what I did is I got this. If you're going to do it in metal, and I don't know what tools you have, but for anybody else who's listening, let's say, what I got was this nice diamond
Listen up,
tipped
Ashton
pen shape.
Shasan. We're gonna school you.
What I got was this nice diamond tipped engraver thing, and it was like, it was cheap. It was like $25. I'm like, what is this? This must have the world's smallest diamond in there, but it works, and it just goes, and you just hold it, and you just, like, very carefully hold on to the metal, with the strong grip, and the etcher with a strong grip, and I would just write it in there, and I haven't really had any problems with it. It gets the job done. But yeah, no colors on this. I never got the thing. And by the way, for that, I worked out a Stenwick's book, and I've seen that Aaron Leach has some differences. So
Yeah, I did like 20-30 hours comparing every single difference between their two, and then looking at the manuscripts just
yeah,
for the Heptarchia.
that makes
And
you
what I
that
got,
makes you hardcore.
well, what I got was fascinating. Like, it was
Yeah,
it's the basis of a whole new introductory format for getting just into that through this
yeah,
initial work. And that's what I laid out for my weekly class, because that's what I have to do. I mean, I
yeah,
put a
yeah.
lot of work into those classes because I want to educate them at the same level I'm educated. So it's more of a graduate seminar sort of perspective with the expectation of a lot of self-directed work. But if you don't do it, that's fine. Who gives a shit? It's not
Mm,
my education, it's yours.
yeah.
And but I want to be circumspect in the presentation of information, because what's the point in studying magic with someone if you're just learning their opinion and some other stuff they made up or received, and then when you compare it to everyone else, it doesn't fit into any tradition anywhere. It's a different schema of the aura, or it's some completely debauched Kabbalah,
Yeah.
based on which again, it's just like, this is not even, some people get even taught that it is something that it isn't, like that it is the actual essential nominalistic understructure of the universe, and that we're receiving the universe through it. This is such a conceptual flaw that will lead to so many problems in practical magic, right? If you don't
But let
understand,
me,
conceptions are there to guide us to experience nature and spirit at best.
yeah. Yeah, let me circle back and connect that with
Please
linguistics. And
do, because you're super smart.
one of the Schwepp episode, well, thank you. One of the Schwepp episodes, Love Fest 2021.
Got my
If you
Pineapple Express right here.
nice. Do you listen to the Schwepp with Earl Fontenelle?
No, what is it?
It- Oh my God. This is right up your alley. So it's the Secret History of Western Esotericism podcast. It's hosted by this guy named Earl Fontenelle, and the dude takes basically the exact history. It's model. It's sort of semi a play on the history of Western philosophy without any gaps, which is like this joke title of a podcast. But but he does the kind of the same thing. He starts all the way back to like pre-Pythagorean thought, and it takes us through the Pythagorean cult, and then getting up to Plato and so on and so forth, all the way up to, I think now he's past the antique period, but he's getting in. So he's in some medieval philosophers. So it's a lot of philosophers who are trying to, and there's some mysticism mixed in. But anyway, there's this one person who he interviewed about how there's this spell that people would say, and it didn't make any sense. It sounded just like a barbarous word. It didn't make, or a corrupted word, right? But the spell still worked. And then the linguist took this analysis. I'm probably getting like this only 50% right, but he said that he analyzed the words, and it sounded like he realized, oh, this is the word, for a spell, let's say to break a broken bone. He realized that, I mean, you and I both know German, so if we hear it in English, if somebody just says, Bein zu Bein, Bein zu Bein, oh, we know, okay, that's bone to bone. That's what that means. That's what those words are. But it became corrupted, in the so we only hear, in English, oh, it's some kind of, weird, funky word that we don't have in English, but it seems to work to bring bones together. And he traces that, I think, all the way back to PIE, to the Proto-Indo-European language. And yet it still seems to work, and magicians are still using it, even though they have no idea what it means. And it's like this corrupted previous version of the language. It was crazy. So sometimes there's even value like in stuff that's just like, you don't know why. And it's weird. Like, one other thing I wanted to run by you, the Stele of Jew, aka like Crowley's version, like Liber Samic. It's funny, I've realized some stuff about that that I'm going to try next time I do that ritual, which is that I'm going to, how like they have those long strings of vowels. It occurred to me that, what if there is meaning into how many vowels there are? And what if that is a code to say what note on a musical scale you should be vibrating that word at,
I
right?
was I was I was thinking that just the other day, because I was
Yeah,
I was
good.
playing around with one of Reverend Zemi I mean
Yeah,
Zemi
yeah.
Jehudi's.
Yeah, Jehudi.
I
Yeah.
was just experimenting with one out of context. Um, and I was contemplating. I always think about that with the vowels. Like, is it a number to equal a
Yeah.
note or frequency, or is it just the length of time you vibrate that one? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the problem is, no matter how good the theory we come up with, this is the real fucking problem. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how good the theory we come up with is, we won't actually know. Isn't that
Yeah.
doesn't that suck?
but maybe it'll work better if we try these things, or maybe it was never intended to be used that way, but it's like I said before with the math. It's like there's this hidden structure that either we're imposing, or maybe the spirit is giving us this idea to do it because that's the better way to do it. And it's like D and Kelly, when they were doing their conjurations, they didn't have math in mind. They weren't thinking about that. They just wanted to talk to the angels. And yet they brought in something that was heavily mathematically and geometrically focused, in addition to having a language, in addition to being able to have all these, hundreds of angels that you could work with. It's like, geez, there's sometimes you get way more than you ask for. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the mathematical geometric thing is one of the things that blows me away the most about the Enochian system, because of how it then, because of, and the revelations I had after I closed Temple Tahuti, and in 2005 was living in west coast of Ireland, like in the Aran Islands, in the Gaeltachts, and I had an American shaman buddy and get me some mushrooms, and we all did mushrooms by the bank of the Avon, and like, boom, I was in fairyland in a way that I
Mhm.
didn't ever conceive of it. And that's what it was to me, especially
Yeah.
where I was and the kind of magic I've been practicing my whole life. Um, and then, but because of all my Enochian experience and all my work on inner planes, 3 day long meditations where you're basically in a box, and
Sure.
these states and the math and all of that with the Enochian system and the psychedelics lined up in such a shocking way. Fast forward 15 years of working with that later with the psilocybin, I finally in Berlin tried changa and DMT, and it was just even, it was like, oh, it's fully real, and I believe that it's a full, this is the spirit realm, the astral planes,
Yeah.
and these spirits and beings are intimately related to that. And somewhere in between, Stenwick, I think, has a very good understanding of this weird interplay between sort of the frequency theory of consciousness and metaphysics, like base metaphysics, because there's a problem with the interaction of those two things that we haven't figured out yet, right? Some say it might be
Mm,
in dark, the answer might be somewhere in dark matter or something like this. We don't know. We haven't fixed the problem of consciousness and what the matter is, in what matter
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, that's a huge fucking
There's
problem,
yeah,
right?
yeah, there's so much that we don't know. We thought, I think the 20th century lulled us into this sense of security where, after we didn't
We got
after
toasters, we figured
yeah,
it out.
we got toasters, and we didn't we only used the A bombs twice, we being, my country.
I think it was three
But
times. No, twice.
uh not Nagasaki and Hiroshima are the two, but then of course we tested all over the place and irradiated the entire atmosphere. Sorry, we in Russia both did that, but we did more because we're number one.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is like the physics that we got, it was very elegant. It's like, okay, you get the Einstein, and we can explain math and, gravity and space time, and how, time can be relative, and that's cool. And then, oh yeah, quantum mechanics. Oh, it's kind of like this weird kind of like static where, particles arise out of that. Oh, that's interesting. But, other than that, but then it's like there's this whole other level where we still don't even know why galaxies outside of ours are behaving so differently from what you would expect, or star systems in other galaxies are behaving differently, because it's like, that's not the way that, it's like it violates, like the motion of the planets is too fast, and is faster in some areas than you would expect based on, the way that stuff comes together. It's just, there's a lot out there that we don't know. And then of course, I'll bring it back to the UFOs, because I'm very interested in this, especially
Oh,
speaking. The nice thing about not having done psychedelics, and there's very little to say for it
no, you're in a
at
you're in
this
a
point.
unique position, like
At,
Brian Mirror Rescue,
very, very
for
unique. Yeah.
temporarily. We're gonna fix this.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fixed. I'm sure somebody will be a friend, and it'll all be taken care of, and I will make sure to watch the set and setting and all of that. But I am in the unique position to say, okay, well, it's not like I'm coming up with this stuff based on a bunch of drugs I took, or, oh, your brain is fried. It's not that, obviously, but yet you and I, we have very similar experiences, both in the magical and everything you're saying about this. It's like those are the kinds of visions that you get in Enochian, where you can see what's going on and you can kind of manipulate it. Every single time somebody's talked about like a psychedelic experience and they're going to this place and that place, opening this door, that door, all of these things line up very, very similarly to like what you do when you're in an Enochian vision state. At least for me, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not the best, but like I say, I'm okay at a lot of different things, and scrying is one of them. I'm not a Kelly level scryer. So
Was Kelly a good
anyway,
scryer, I guess?
I think he was pretty good in the sense that the number of modalities that he was in all the time, and plus he was able, like when I see an angel, it's rare for me to see them like I'm seeing you. He was able to do that. Now I'll see other visions.
Yeah, I haven't read
Yeah,
all this stuff as much as most of you actually, like all the diaries and the pure stuff.
yeah,
I was just sort of GD until
yeah, yeah.
until I did the Enochian master class and last year during the beginning of COVID, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this like, and I had done an operation with Lon, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna check out the purest Enochian tradition, and I'm glad I am, because boy, oh boy, did it time well with the 22 DMT experiments I did at that same time. And
Hmm.
the 22nd experiment fucking finally worked, or whatever. But yeah,
22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet.
well, that
Hey,
was the intention. And that's what
there you
I,
go.
anyway,
Yeah.
uh, where were we?
I think we were covering psychedelics and just how it kind of lines up. But anyway, so I'm not gonna. You can't say I'm the guy who fried his brain. Like maybe weed, you could say I did too much weed back in the day, but that was I don't consider that a psychedelic unless you do like way way too much in a given night. But
Yeah, no.
and I haven't in a while. I had to stop drinking too because I had a problem with that. But other than that, it's like I think I'm relatively normal. I don't wear the tinfoil hat yet. So, you know.
Yeah. So Dean, I always got the impression, because I haven't read as much as you probably on this, but the impression that D struggled with visions, but with Kelly, or that Kelly, that D had to help him out a lot and see things himself that Kelly wasn't able to describe. Isn't that the case,
Mm,
that D had to then see the letters? It wasn't
I'm not
Kelly seeing them?
I'm not sure, that's the thing. I haven't gone as into the diaries, and the problem for me is I have a very hard time reading D's handwriting. Especially since a lot of it is margin in the margins, and it's like I can't read this as well as other people who have spent more time with it. And maybe I can someday, but I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, that stuff's always hard.
It is tough, especially because they were trying to conserve paper, because that was an economic consideration. But what Jason mentions in his book on it is that the angels told D that that he mentioned to the angels, well, if I close my eyes, I can see visions. And they say, but whereas Kelly, he would use the shoe stone, and all of that, or the show stone, shoe, however they pronounced it back then, right? I think it's
Show.
just
I mean, that's the spelling of show.
back in the day. Okay.
Yeah.
But they said to him, when D said that he could see better with his eyes closed, they said that's even better. So every time I've gone on like a Zoom call and walked people through like a vision, I say, just close your eyes. Because if the angels say it's better, just do that. You don't need to buy an obsidian. I had an obsidian mirror because when I first started out, I'm just like, well, when I read that, I'm like, why do I have this? So I just gave it away. I've given away so much of my stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, if it's better to just close your eyes, then just close your eyes, dude. So
Well, yeah, I was talking to a one of these sort of 7=4 GD adepts a while back, and I was
mm,
I was talking about practicing different scrying methods. I mostly use a copper bowl that I hammered out of copper, like Nostradamus sort of style. It's my
mm,
favorite thing. But crystal balls I've worked with a ton,
awesome.
Black Mirror a little bit. And I was talking, and he was just like, I don't use. He's like, dude, but most of us don't. We don't use anything really. We just do it. I'm like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
of course. But the theory I was trying to explain was that the idea that these tools could be useful for increasing different ways and different energies. But what was interesting was
Yeah.
he reminded me of the fact that there's an argument that those things are always perhaps limiters or crutches. to just pure vision. And that's a controversial thing to say. I know that, especially in the grimoire culture we've got on evocation these days. Maybe we can talk just a tiny bit about that, because I think we might have interesting perspectives, even or especially if they're coming out of a little bit of ignorance, because sometimes that's where the best questions are, right? There are no stupid
Yeah.
questions. So maybe we might just have some questions that some of these fuckers can answer for us in a satisfactory way, because there is this question of visible appearance, of Black Mirror, of appearing in the
Yeah.
triangle. Like I just read John King's Imperial Arts. I've got thoughts on that. And
Yeah.
what do you think about this thing, the pure vision
Oh,
versus manifesting in the objects, or seeing the vision or seeing it trigger? Because my understanding was always that the crystal sphere, or especially, was to trigger the imagination of the mind. That's definitely a Golden Dawn approach. And
yeah.
what's been best for me, especially since I've been doing the psychic astral meditative stuff for so long. But what do you think about this debate?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna sidestep it by in a probably dissatisfactory way for people who are listening. But like, so you take the word imagination, right? I mean, what is the root word of that is image, being able to see, right? But we say, well, imagination is not real, but it's still something you're seeing, right? So, or in the case, we've since expanded it. It could be you're imagine hearing something. We've expanded that into the other sense modalities. But I would say, like, if you're if so, what did they mean when they said visible appearance? Did they mean you're able to see it directly as if it were as real as anything else in front of you? Or did they just mean you are able to see a vision? A vision is something you see, therefore it's to visible appearance, right? So like, instead of one of the people I did, it was kind of a weird thing. I was going to a gifted conference, and I just got the sense by the angels, okay, you need to bring your stuff. And I'm like, what? The Enochian angels like, you need to bring your materials as much as you can. I said, okay. And I just chatted up this woman, and we're both kind of like these, out there spiritual types, and I said to her, but she hadn't known about Enochian. And it turns out that she, so we did the call to text and all of that, but it turns out that she was unable to see, and her sight wasn't fixed until the age of 4. So like, a lot of those faculties that you develop as a child, related to seeing, she didn't have. I mean, she could still see just fine, with glasses and all of that, but her vision wasn't corrected until the age of 4. So the problem with it, so she said that ever since then, I've not been able to use the imagination. And if I close my eyes and, try to do that, it's just not going to happen. And there are people who have aphantasia as well, so that's a real condition.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is she still had something. She had something that was a feeling based kind of thing. And she got messages that were more auditory, but she could feel a whirling around her, but she couldn't see anything when she closed her eyes and did that. So I guess my take on that is, like, when it comes to being able to see something, I mean, it depends on what they meant in the manuscript. And we don't, that's the problem with grimoires, right? We know what the grimoire says, but we don't know if, let's say, somebody was an apprentice to somebody who is a more of an adept, if they ask those kinds of questions. And that's not something you would spell out in a grimoire, because that would be understood in the communities in which you were practicing magic, or two people who were pretty good at magic would talk to each other, and it would kind of go without saying. So that's probably my take on it. I know that some people, there are times in which I will see something. It's like kind of augmented reality. That's kind of the way I look at it. It's like, this is an augmented reality, and sometimes it's going to look as real as other stuff, but I can't say that I've had it to that level of fidelity, or resolution, if we're going to use a real geeky term. I've never had it at full reality resolution, but that's part of the reason why I say I'm just okay. I mean, you take somebody like Kelly. I mean, he's literally getting beaten up by spirits and like physically injured as a result of that. With one of his, it was actually Libra Loga that he was working with when he had those owies.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I always
but
like to think of vision work or spiritual vision of all spiritual vision as drawing from the Bible idea of seeing through a glass darkly.
right.
And to me, that's
That's a
what's
good
so
analogy.
amazing about psychedelics. I always get biblical, baby. Um, what's so amazing about psychedelics is this thing from the earth, right? And it's also sometimes endogenous that takes us beyond that. So what does
Mhm.
if well, only when we know God will we see face to face, and we see face to face through these gifts of the earth, then
Yeah,
to me that see, I'm a pantheist. So
right.
now I
There,
basically, that's my argument for God is nature. What we're
yeah,
actually trying to behold in the spirit realm, all of our magic is nature, just on a level that we can't perceive physically.
yeah,
But and therefore the idea of imagination, which comes from nature, from our bodies and consciousness, everything to do with us is nature. There's this weird activating spirit running through it, which is the spirit is the part of nature you don't see. And I love the idea of tying this to Goethe's idea of nature, nature to nature and naturing, which it comes from the semiotic theory of Robert Corrington, who's an awesome pantheist and semiotician. But I think that's very, very possible, or it's definitely a theory that works best with my experience. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so, in that sense, yeah, we're seeing into nature most clearly through entheogens, but we can see all the time through a glass darkly, and the level of clarity has to do with maybe our theosis, our divinization, or fucking
yeah.
who knows whether we're standing on a ley line or holding the right crystal or
Yeah, or
bathed with
or
incense.
just like meditating for a while, and you get closer and closer to that if you're doing keeping up. And I'm not I'm not the best at this myself. I mean, there are so many like little things I need to do. I need to keep the bipolar in check. I got to run. I have or exercise. I need to
Yeah.
do this and that. Sometimes I get the meditation in if I happen to have slept a lot, but also gotten up early enough to be able to both run and do it. It's just it's sometimes it's the life of a householder. It's the life of somebody who's in the world. It's not this high magic, okay, you're a king, and so if you want to take an hour out to meditate, you can.
Have you read Frater Acher much?
Not yet, no.
Oh, well,
I'm not
I was just
I'm
reading his Rosicrucian Magic, and he says something exactly what you're saying right now about that's the Rosicrucian approach, is not departing from the world. And it made when you described the Enochian sphere cutting your heart into and bifurcating it, so that you could exist in these two places and have your heart in
mhm.
the spirit realm, but also fully presented to the world. And you're even transparent about this. You're presenting this shit at fucking Mensa. Yeah, baby, rock and roll.
Yeah.
And
It'll
and
be controversial, I'm
that's
sure.
exactly what Frater Ackers hat geschrieben in sein neue Bücher, gell?
Yeah, yeah,
Wo
yeah.
hast du dein
Okay.
Deutsch gelernt?
Ich habe es in Hochschule und in Uni ein bisschen studiert, aber leider habe ich nicht genug Wörter gelernt, oder ich erinnere mich nicht auf alle die Wörter, das ich brauche, um gut zu reden. So.
Du redest sehr gut. Nein, du sprichst
Dankeschön.
perfekt. Das ist perfekt, ja. Super. Ich kann dich anrufen um 3 Uhr manchmal und auf Deutsch Scheiß reden. Very cool, man. Yeah, well, you
Thanks.
should like Frater Acker, because whenever he does the good quotes, it's fun that whenever he comes to a historical quote, he'll like put it fully in German as well,
Ah,
which is
nice.
a treat for, because all the Latin motherfuckers get all this Latin, like
Right.
Peterson and Skinner gets all this Greek, and they all get their fucking languages, the French, all this French shit.
Yeah.
Where's the German? We need our German.
German, yeah, I did have it a treat. I had one time when I had to use it that it was helpful, and that was when I was transcribing Lita Hollingworth's Children Above 180 IQ for Project Gutenberg. And there were these passages in there that were in German that she chose not to translate because she assumed that whoever would be reading this would at least be able to know somebody who knew German enough to do that. But I went ahead and said, I said about how this child hat jede, uh, 6 Monate alt, hat jede Syllabe herausgedruckt, just, pressed out every single word, and it was like, okay, this is pretty helpful, skill to have. I can at least translate this okay, so that if, you're an English speaker, because English is the dominant until the Chinese until Mandarin becomes it,
It's yeah, well, that happened a long time ago where I live. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, baby, dude. Which is, yeah, the world is
It's
changing.
reality.
World's
Yeah.
changing. That's why we need to get Scott Stenwick's new book on how you use focusing on using the aethers to affect, geographical and political change. We can all go to war with each other politically on the astral plane. Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be fun? Doesn't that
Oh
sound like a
man.
good time, a way to spend our time?
It's funny. I was listening to Layla Kinzalman's reading about the battle of whatever street that was with Crowley versus the Golden Dawn,
Yeah,
and all that whole thing, and
he read
the
a
use
very
of
one-sided view of it.
I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was coming out of a book, but it was interesting because I've heard that story elsewhere, or I've read it elsewhere, probably more likely than not, and it was just interesting. It's just like, you know, it would be much easier if we took kind of this Buddhist approach. So I think that's my next thing is like, I will probably try to, I have the Tibetan Book of the Dead here. That'll probably be the next reading task that I have for myself, because
Oh,
I've heard about
nice.
the Bardos. I know about it, but I want to get that
Yeah,
going.
I got my
And
copy right there that
yep,
I've been reading
but I
for
haven't,
probably six.
I've never read the source material of that well, so I'm going to try to get into that.
It's
But I'm thinking about,
fascinating.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about getting into like Nyingma and Kagyu Buddhism, but it's just like, that you're really embarking on a course of study then, because they got a lot of magic techniques, tantra techniques, and then but they always combine it with this idea of karma, and it's just like, you just got to think about like, there's an advantage to maybe trying something, but there's a deep advantage to just accepting, because but it's harder to do. We don't like doing that. We don't like to accept, but there's a huge advantage to just accepting.
I mean that I had this weird experience where I got to meet the Dalai Lama. He put the cloth around my head. I said, "Do you have a teaching for me?" He said, "Don't become Buddhist." And apparently
Okay,
he
he
was
must
saying that to everyone, and then he said it at a speech as well after, and explained what he meant. So
yeah,
he's a good spiritual leader. He knows how to set the stage for his thing.
right,
His point was about, yeah, it's about depth of practice. He said
yeah,
if you keep going back, changing the road you're on, you're just setting yourself back. Just,
it could be.
it's yeah, that will that's the Buddhist opinion apparently.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably part of the reason why I haven't gotten as into the Gelug branch of Tibetan Buddhism. But they're all they seem to be pretty chill with each other nowadays. But of course, I'm an outsider. I don't know what's going on between various lineages. But yeah, I'm interested in that. I've gotten into Lama Lena online. I kind of watch her, and she points out certain things. I'm like, oh yeah, I should have remembered that, or oh, that's pretty interesting. Maybe I should try that. But it's funny. She talks about like how she has autism, and she's an older lady, so she's self-diagnosed, I'm sure. But it's interesting hearing her describe how she has to like set up her life, or has to in order to avoid having a meltdown, and how she even has had a meltdown like fairly recently. And it was like, I get that. I have bipolar. I will have the occasional meltdown, or I have to like be very into like, okay, what am I thinking? Is this taking me in a crazy direction and stuff like that? And sometimes I'm going to fail too. And you have to like get very deep on the acceptance that sometimes you are going to be a big asshole and not try to be one, and yet you are. And you have to like realize that there will be times like that, and try your best to avoid them, but just be like, you know, you just try your best. It's embarrassing as all get out, but you have to, because you realize afterwards, and you're like, you're not in that state anymore, but there's like that wreckage behind you. It's just like, gotta
Yeah.
try, gotta try. But that's the nature. It's like the corrupted nature of humanity. It's a very small version of that. The fall.
Yeah, we're in this fallen state. I mean, that's the it's hard to imagine. I mean, some people, I think it's crazy when people aren't in touch with it, like who sort of have this Dionysian view of themselves
Yeah,
and like the ones who end up, usually becoming these corrupt leaders and abusers in these groups and gurus. um
yeah,
and it makes me think that some of the most powerful stuff in the magical systems that is being thrown out is like even Frater talks about cutting out the parts of the prayer of Enoch where it says I am less than sand. He's like, because this is not in a alignment, I think it's him, where this is not in alignment with my view of things. And I'm like, I think there's something to be said about this understanding that is maybe a bit of baby and not bathwater in the religious ethos.
yeah.
You know,
I kept that part in. That part of
uh,
the prayers I would do each morning is the prayer of Enoch, and I kept that part in. I did
like,
not change that. I appended stuff to it, but I didn't excise stuff.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, is it crazy to think that kind of language is also, or just, or maybe more about the effect it causes in us on an energetic level?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, just really simply, is like, okay, me before Gebofal is less than sand compared to like the divine insights that you get, and that's enough for me. I clearly,
I like that.
yeah,
That's great. Yeah,
thanks.
on a basic level, that kind of language of humility and sinfulness, and then reborn salvific righteousness
Yeah.
is the oh, I just said the sort of the solvate coagula process, but
Okay.
also that was the secondary one I was thinking. The main one I was thinking is um damn, it's obviously got a bit of above and below. That was the thing. I forgot. I had the word and then I
Something
had it.
alchemical in that vein then.
Yeah, it's not just a formula, it's something else. Damn, I should have smoked less Pineapple Express. But
Something about you've talked about cleaning the alembic or making sure that it's
yeah,
clear, but yeah,
yeah.
that's all right.
There's a lot that can be said about this, in fact. But yeah, the it's the lead into gold.
Yeah,
Same thing, same fucking thing, right? So
absolutely.
like one is the lead. That's the thing. I'm less than sand. I'm lead. And then you're using your language. You're describing this alchemical process of the philosopher's stone in a
Hmm.
prayer. And
Yeah.
it's a kind of weird formula that we interpret beyond physical chemistry because it has so many parallels in other mystical teachings. It obviously these all have obviously ancient antecedents that we have
Yeah.
lost track of. We've smashed those cuneiform tablets or burnt them in the Library of Alexandria, because I guarantee you there was writings on this shit. We have such a small fraction of
Oh
like
yeah.
of the Gnostics, the Neoplatonists. Like now the things we found have led us to understand that there's all this shit just wiped out.
Oh,
So
it's one of those tragedies of history. I think of like Archimedes having discovered proto calculus, and then bam, some Russian or some Roman soldier kills him on site instead of keeping him alive. But you can see we've only discovered using like X-ray technology that he had this like proto calculus like limit, showing a limit, approaching the limit as
wow,
x goes to infinity. We could have been to the moon like 500 years earlier if chemistry was going at that same rate. It's just like,
jeez.
come on, man.
Oh, man. I
Come on,
wanted to
man.
start the podcast saying to you because I noticed
uh,
you said that. Also,
yeah, yeah.
you talked a little bit about some of my ideas on with Ryan's podcast, which was cool. I'm glad that something I said may sort of stuck with you a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If
I'm learning a lot everybody. I'm just like
Everybody.
always
Yeah.
listening to as many different people. I'm binging Lilo Kenzawan's stuff. I'm binging your stuff. I'm binging.
Lots of
It's like there's not enough hours in the day, and yet
no.
somehow I get annoyed when my podcast goes back to zero. I'm like, I got to find something else, because people can only make so much content for you, Cliff.
Well, I really think you got to do the book, because you have a different kind of mind than Aaron's. You're going to approach things in a different way. You're already more eclectic, and I think people need to hear about these main ideas. Like, I don't know anyone else that is even close to me being able to put up some sort of book together. But I think a book with even if you were willing to show the tools and stuff like that, could be a really fabulous thing. It doesn't have to be that big,
Yeah.
but I think honestly that would be a wonderful contribution.
I appreciate that. What I'll need definitely is a co-author, because and and so I'll scour for people. I'll find folks.
Maybe
Um,
Stenwick would do that,
he might. I mean, the guy's
because he hasn't
super
written on
busy.
Liber Loga,
He hasn't. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
and this could be a
Er,
chance for you to both write about it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess what I want is, I want some, like I said earlier, I kind of want like just like a 3-volume thing. Like he tries to do that with different parts of the system. I kind of want it, instead of the different parts of the system, I want it like beginner. Here's Aristotle's elements. Here's astrology. Then getting into, and then, maybe mapping on the heptarchy a little bit, and then getting into more advanced stuff like with the aethers. But I think like, just going along, making it easier and easier for people to do. But yeah, I mean, I need to get to the bandwidth, and I got to finish transcribing the copy of this one before I do that. But I appreciate
Yeah,
that. I'm
lots to do. I know.
lots, and let's hope I live that long, right? Isn't that the thing? Like,
Yeah.
oh, well,
Oh,
you don't know what'll happen. You try, and
like, I know the next 8, 9 years of my life, right? Like,
yeah,
I know exactly what I'm doing. Oh yeah, I don't know how I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing. I know what I need to do, and
yeah,
I usually I haven't historically had much choice in what I know I need to do. It's just sort of
yeah,
part of the deal.
yeah.
I've got a
I,
listener question for you, if you don't mind.
oh, okay,
And
sure. Why not?
I don't know if it's a time for that, because I know you said you only
We're
had a
getting
little
close to
time.
we're getting close to 3 hours, but
All right.
I'll
Here's
take a listener question, then we can probably wrap up.
um I'll just read the whole thing because
I'm
yeah,
honored. This is my first listener
it's
question.
long.
All right.
After listening to both episodes of Praxis, a few things were unclear. For example, you describe yourself as a D purist, where you built out his method and equipment with the Casaubon material, and went on to describe how adding extra details to the 4 small sigillum diamets under the legs of the table added extra nuance or focus to the work. Makes sense. But at another point in the conversation, there was a reference made to the fact that some of the more basic furniture is unused, missing. The specific example was the red carpet. I was
Right.
hoping you could elaborate on the differences. It seems like a red carpet is rather easier to procure and use than the effort required to execute the fine detail work on those tiny SDA. One other interesting part was where you describe your approach with the Abramelin works, starting with Liber Samic, a hacked custom
Yeah.
unicursal hexagram designed to synthesize multiple hexagrams and reduce the multiple hexagrams being needed to be drawn. And finally, your insistence on taking the Abramelin text as a framework skeleton that requires customization and extension. After all of that, the subtext seemed to be that consistency and intent were the keys. Is there any way you can get into a bit more about the details of how you extended and customized?
Okay.
People really pay
So
attention to this shit for some
that,
reason.
yeah, there was a lot there. Okay, so I'll try to go through, and if we need to revisit the question, because it was a lot, and I could have written it down. Yeah, no, I couldn't have written it down.
No.
I'm not that fast a typist. But okay, so as far as the materials, yeah, I haven't made absolutely everything. I haven't made the banners, and I haven't made the rug or the carpet, the 9-foot carpet that I think you're supposed to do. For a while there, what I did to as sort of a workaround, I would do either the SIRP or the SBRP, depending on what I felt the energies were needed. So that was how I did it. And of course, if you know those, then you know that the same Enochian names are in both. So you're giving that acknowledgement to the names of God. As far as the red carpet, yeah, it's probably easier in some ways. You could go to a fabric store and get a silk rug, or enough fabric to make a silk rug. It's 9 feet. I'm, a 9-foot rug in any room is very dominant. It's also, I also have cats at home. So we have to deal with realities
Be
a little bit as they
realistic
are.
here.
Yeah. So the unicursal hexagram, what that is, or the hacked hexagram, what that is, what they're referring to is Stenwick's. I don't know if he still has that up on his site. Back in my day, a while ago, and we're talking about 10 years ago. That's at least probably closer to 15. When I was still following Stenwick all the way back then. What he talks about is a hexagram, and it goes like this. And maybe I'll do it from my position, so you'll have to like reverse it in your head. But like, it was something, you start at the center of a Golden Dawn style hexagram, and I'll just do this as if it's a wand, and it would go right here, and you go up, down, make this triangle, and then down the opposite direction like that. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that you would do for a solar style hexagram, is instead of having to make all 12 of those like you would do in the original Golden Dawn system, right? So do it from absolutely every point, and then go backwards and do it. It's like, that's a lot. And especially if I were to do that right now, I just had like a little minor procedure back here, so I'm not going to be doing that with all that. So that's what they're referring to there. So I chose to use that. It's not that I did not use the Crowley unicursal hexagram. I find absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just not something that I did. For whatever reason, I wanted to use a version of the Golden Dawn hexagram with that. So that's why I did that. That's the hack that Stenwick put out. I don't know if he still is using that. I'm
It's in
presuming he
his book,
does.
Mastering the Mystical
Okay.
Heptarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there you go. I've used that book. I didn't use all of the rituals in that. You cobble together
Yeah,
what
you
you
did the
can.
GD style, which is more SIRP, SBRP.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely what
Or
we
H,
would
but
do.
yeah. But
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, both. Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know. Yeah, see, I don't know how this stuff has evolved, and so, but at any rate, so the question about the HGA work. So I'm look, I'm just a person, right? So what I
Come on, man.
I'm come on, man. Yeah, I'm giving this highly defensive, please don't hurt me kind of thing. But I'm joking and I'm teasing, so please take this in the spirit of friendly
Hey,
joshing is the word.
everyone here is a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Yeah, everybody, yeah, and I'm always worried because like people may take the approach, and I'm trying to be nice. We get Minnesota nice because we're so close to Canadian nice. That's why we get that. We're like almost an honorary province in that sense,
See?
culturally. Yeah, but well, I could get sidetracked with that, but like, look, I do what I do. I'm not going to say that what I did was perfect or for everybody else. Keep in mind that, so the reason, let's get back to why I was doing the HGA work. What started that off? So the issue was that my live-in mother-in-law, because my wife wanted to have her live with us because she was getting older and all of that. And she got that diagnosis of breast cancer. And nothing kind of clears the senses that more than getting this idea, yeah, I kind of got to get with my shit in my life because I could die. I'm going to die someday. So it's probably a good idea for me to be real and to try to get a lot of these things going. If you want to make spiritual progress, and what I was doing is I was kind of circling around with LBRP, sometimes MPR, and then the occasional planetary work, just working off out of Stenwick system.
Yeah.
But I realized I gotta upgrade my stuff. So the Abramelin thing that I did was, I went online and I studied other people. So I saw Scarlett Magdalene on the Witches and Wine podcast, and she talks about how she had to modify that. So I did something kind of similar where I modify. So she talks about having to like go in the parking lot. She did that kind of isolation so she could go in the parking lot in her car and pray there and do the whole 9 yards, because you're supposed to pray like 3 times a day. So what I did, just to try to condense this into a quick procedure about what people do, what people can do. I mean, people are going to take different approaches. At first I was following Liber Samekh, and I was doing that with the invocation, or the LIR, or excuse me, the GIRH for the Sephirot of Tiferet, and and then I would also do the Liber Samekh, and I would try to do that and with increasing frequency. And it turns out that I almost wonder if this happened because I bought the Dane translation of Abramelin, but because I went around to that. But the whole process, so I started with that, and for whatever reason, I just felt, no, you need to be doing Abramelin instead of that. So I'm kind of in a weird position where the whole process took about 18 months, and it kind of more or less started. It started, with roughly around the time, maybe, I want to say early April of 2017, and it finished up in October of 2018. So it was roughly 18 months. But what I did was I started off with Liber Samekh with that greater invoking ritual of the hexagram to Tiferet. And I would do that regularly. I would do it like morning, noon, night, and it's tough going into your car in a Texas heat and doing all that. But I would do that. I started off, I did that part mainly at home, right? And trying to do that kind of once a day. The switch to Abramelin was about, let's say, roughly 6 months into that process. And so I like made the oil, I made what I could. And I would go into the car, I would do the thrice daily prayers, but I still kept that GIRH. And at first I was like doing LBRP, but I'm just like, eventually you have to think about time constraints with this. So I did that for a very long time. I think very close towards the end, and then I got I remembered the Aether of Zid being what Crowley talked about, where he has this whole discussion about where you meet your guardian angel and all of that. So I switched. I started incorporating, or I started scrying. I know I got partial visions of that Aether, but it was starting to bring in this energy. So when my HGA appeared, if you're going to try to compare me to somebody like Rufus Opus or whatever, it's not going to be a one-to-one comparison. And the reason I say that is because I was getting, as I went along, I was getting more and more desperate. Okay, I'll just, and that's probably a good place to be in, because that is that nice humility, that less than sand place that you need to be in order for that to happen. Now, I still got confirmation in the form of, I had that silver plate, like my wife had an inherited silver plate, and I used that like they have in that translation to get that sigil for your HGA. I did that, and that was enough confirming to me, because I could see it. It was very clear. Speaking of divisible appearance, that's as close as I can say, is that okay, it was like this afterburn in my eyes. I could see it on that plate, and I wrote it down, and I still have it with me, that initial drawing of it. So that's kind of what I did that way. And I forget the last part of the question, because I've answered 2 of those at length. But what was the third part? I want to be sure I answer that and give a full answer.
Yeah. Wow, what great answers.
But yeah, when mine appeared, so while you're looking at that, I think that my HGA, so in Egyptian magic, doing that sort of thing, they do talk about, or Greek magic, Greco-Egyptian magic, they talk about a tutelary spirit, and that you can do it via whatever magical means that they have. And Crowley was trying to reproduce that with Liber Samekh. My thinking on this is that there's probably more, either just one for you, like a personal thing, or there's multiple daimons that you can get with different systems that are for you, to be used by you, very extraordinarily personal to you. that Abramelin is probably one version of that you get through Egyptian Jewish magic. That that Liber Samek is probably much more of like a Greco-Egyptian. And I think that if you do Enochian, for whatever reason, so I think mine is kind of like something of either a fusion or of evolution from one to the last one. But that's what I had. That I'm pretty sure that it was. That's why I got so into Enochian, because I got some of that Enochian flavor to my HGA,
What
or
if
for
the
whatever personal thing you
whatever
want to call it.
this being, higher self, true self, or holy guardian angel is, what if
Mhm.
how we experience them isn't different because they're different beings, but because the different ways we contact them establishes us sort of through a unique radio signal, and
Mhm.
that's just the frequency that we are hearing them on, and
Yeah.
therefore by doing it in different systems you get multiple channels to this same true
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. I mean, the way I did it is I should have been much more. There are a lot of things I would have done differently, but I went through the whole process. What was that last part of the question? I know I'm missing
Oh,
something.
it was just on extending and customization, I think.
Oh, of
Because
Enochian, or
uh oh, there was a part about the furniture. Yeah, red
yeah, I've
carpet,
covered the
easier to do. Yeah, I
furniture,
think
the
you covered
HGA,
everything.
the thing. Okay. Yeah. So it's a good question. I mean, like I wish I could like go into a lot of detail. It's like
Yeah, shout
but
out.
I
Thanks
think
for the
that
question, Saskatchewan.
yeah, yeah, I am I do appreciate the question, and I hope I answered it fulsomely and respectfully. I want to
I think your answer
clarify.
was awesome.
Thank you. I didn't I did not use Castalbon's stuff. I did not refer to
No,
any of that.
no, okay.
That was me. So
So what are your
I
what are your main Enochian books? What are your top 4 or 5?
yeah, so Leach's volumes on the Enochian language, the angelical language, I think is what they call it, or angelic language. So volume 1 and 2, I've referred to the Enochian, essentially Enochian grimoire, Stenwick's 2 books. I'm still waiting for volume 3
We all
on
are.
mastering the watchtowers, or the mastering, I think it's the watchtowers, and then the
The heirs.
heptarchy.
The third one's on the
The third
heirs.
one's the heirs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and of course my go-to for just refreshing some basic stuff is Lon Milo Ducats. But those
Yeah.
are like my 4 or 5. Those are my main sources. Sometimes I'll go back to Jason's course. Sometimes I'll go back to that masterclass course. I'm trying, man. If you
I'm
really like,
fascinated.
this is like the kind of mentality that I've been in. But I can definitely say a lot of this is just like Uranus transiting both my luminaries, because I was born under a new moon, so it's just like boom, 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 and it's going on and on and on. I'm like, oh, with that level of intensity. But I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate to have like fallen into this and gotten some really beautiful experiences.
Awesome. Well, I hope we actually get to one day work, do some operations together when I'm in Texas. I'll show you some crazy book H shit I was taught that people,
Mm.
it's just like invented oral tradition last 30, 40 years, I guess, or who knows? Like there's so many temples and adepts that have floated around during the 20th century, way more than people realize. I mean, if they don't
Yeah.
know, just read Zaleski's accounts and talk, open your eyes. And so
Yeah.
so many of them floated around and taught different people, and so many techniques were developed. Like I was talking to one of Pat Beeman's old guys, Damian Murphy, in Seattle, and he's been using Golden Dawn formulas to initiate people just into the neophyte for many years. And then doing the Eucharists and watchtowers for people like friends of friends even to come see it, which is amazing. And he's
Hmm.
initiated by Rigardi's girlfriend, and
Damn.
back in those days. And so there's all these different streams going along. It's such a fruitful time to be a magician and be exploring these things. And like we were talking
Yeah.
earlier, I wanted to say, when you talked about the fact, when we talked about the fact that even if we come up with the best possible theory on it, we won't know the answers often. So we may as well experiment. This is the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Now or never,
Exactly.
baby.
Yeah. One life to live. Isn't that the name of the soap opera? But yeah, it's true. It's like, you know, try stuff out, and I stick with angelic stuff, because it's been you know, I just, that's my inclination. I think I'm just that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also have to be pretty grounded. And so, you know, whether I'm outside, out back gardening, or if I'm, you know, doing whatever, I try to like make sure I'm walking pretty well in both worlds. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and doing this dance with me, brother. It's been
yeah,
fabulous. It's been great to listen to you. So for people who don't know, they got to listen to you twice now, and they need to hear these on Praxis Behind the Obscure.
yep.
The first one and the second one, the video with you doing a show and tell, which I'm
Hmm.
glad, because that meant that we could get into the weeds of a lot of different things. I was really glad by how much we covered of the main operation you've just done, as well as all these other ideas, which you have really interesting thoughts on, fascinating. And
Thank you, sir.
Lux Occult podcast, you did a great
Yeah,
episode with her, and she's wonderful. What a great
she's
voice for
great.
it too. Like, and a mind. It's just, yeah, I'm glad that there's so much happening. Like you said, there's too much happening, but thank God.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's what we need, because that way, you know, there's not, you don't have to just find the one podcast, you know. And I was recently on a completely different topic on Unleash Monday, and just talking about giftedness and
that's what I
how,
saw.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just like, I don't know what, if I had to give an astrological explanation, I'd be like, well, you know, zodiacal releasing from the lot of spirit, and you know, I'm in an L1 L2 peak period, but all that's going to go away after September. In September, you know, that'll be the end of that. I'll finally downshift, and probably the Uranus transit will start, you know, finally getting
Mm.
past my luminaries and my ascendant, so it'll chill out a little bit.
Oh yeah, we could. There's so many areas we could talk about. It, go into
Yeah,
astrology and all that
yeah.
stuff. Well, we'll have to do it again.
All right, thanks, brother. I certainly
Yeah.
will.
All right, Cliff. Shalom.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
good day,
I've had a
man.
pleasure. It's been a
Always
pleasure.
awesome.